Sandy, are you here?
You know, he appreciated so much the presence of everybody there. That was
Okay,
awesome.
I'll tell the others. Thank you. You bet. Bye. He'll be here in 5 minutes.
Move this
5 minutes.
Yeah. He's at Yale.
your transformer away from the.
So while you guys are waiting, what we're talking about, what we just did, so we took a break, and you guys should know about this. The Boise Rescue Mission opened up their new recovery lodge, and it's situated right next to the the Valley Women and Children's Shelter. And it was a former assisted living facility. And so the Boise Rescue Mission purchased that. They've remodeled it, and it is now, it's a facility where someone that is homeless has been in the hospital or is dealing with some real serious issues. They have a place to go when they're discharged from the hospital. Now they can go to this somewhat mini hospital, but it's a recovery center for the homeless, which is great. And so the grand opening was today. And because it was in Nampa, this is the first one of its kind in the entire Treasure Valley. And it's been done by the Boise Rescue Mission. The funding came from Tommy Alquist, from the Catherine Albertson's Foundation, and a number of the hospitals. And so we are truly privileged to have this recovery center sitting here in Nampa. It's awesome, and right next to the Valley Women and Children's Shelter. That's pretty cool. So that's what we're all talking about up here. Sandy's not here yet. Did you reach her?
She's the third in Yale. She'll be here in a second.
Okay.
And I think it's neat, it's just not one, if it's a family homeless, that the children can be there also.
Exactly. Yeah, they were talking. What really prompted it was a little boy. His name is Henry. He was there when he was a newborn. His mom was homeless, but he had serious medical issues. Well, where do you go? You're in a shelter with hundreds of other, maybe not hundreds, but a lot of other people and they said, viruses and colds and yeah. So they need a place that they can be that's a room like a hospital room. So it's pretty cool that we have that in our community. So while we're waiting to start, do you guys have any questions of the council? Should we, I should have asked the council. Sorry.
Questions or criticism?
Well, I got to thinking, there could be a question that somebody's sitting there thinking about, and that they would like to ask. We could do that. If I see everybody, the minds are rolling, and it's like, if I did, would I even ask it?
I heard Brad's a sharpshooter, even from the back seat, so that's why I kind of. Is he?
No, they're smiling because they have.
And I think, when we are live streaming, and I don't know, are we live streaming right now? Yeah, okay. So when we're live streaming, the good news is that our picture right here is really little on the screen, right? Because you're showing this big, right? You will be. Okay, so when you do that, I'm going to be eating, since the council's going to be talking. And so I just wanted to make sure. It's very intimidating.
And so will Sandy.
Okay, so I think we're ready to reconvene our meeting. And really, as we get started, I think the question is, what's the will of the council right now? What direction would you guys like us to go?
Mayor, council, if the information is provided, we had requested before lunch, the Gen Gov line items that were in our book, it'd be great to maybe review those since we haven't seen those. So that VRT, Humane Society, and some of those other items that you referred to. Compass, and I know Rhonda Gilbert, she's not here, she was here earlier. She would be able to maybe answer some clarifying questions. So I don't know if you want to hold off on that, but I had kind of thought it was one area where there's some fluidity because we haven't seen the line items yet. So I wanted to look at those first.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, so
Those
you're
are it.
pulling them up. Doug, do you want to speak to them?
Sure. Would you like me to kind of level set with the process we went and go through this afternoon before we jump into the
Yes, that would be great. And pull the mic close because of the live streaming. They have to hear, directly
Okay,
from the mic.
it's a
Thank you.
little bit like we're eating at the big kids table now. We're sitting way down low, hands coming up way up high, so typing is a bit awkward. But Ed and I and Michelle came up with a process I think will get us through this afternoon. this is a summary of GenGov. It's, a version of this is in your books, but I had to adapt it for today's meeting. The items highlighted in yellow are the ones that we have yet to go through. All the other items, human resources, IT, fire prevention, we have been through. So I've highlighted the yellow lines that we haven't gone through yet. We have also created a file that Ed will manage, and as Ed manages this, he can send it back to me, and then I can bring it up again. I can't have me on him and one another screen. We don't have the technology for that. So he'll manage these changes. And what we have here is we've listed out the essential contingencies we built in, the 380, the 68,000, the $100,000 for Tyler. And this is our general gov budget right now.
Could you make that bigger?
I'm sorry, it's hard to see.
It's hard to
Yes,
see.
yes, I can. I have the technology to do that.
Keep going, dude.
Hang on.
I mean, keep going, sir.
I lost something. Hang on.
Sorry.
Is that what he called the chief when he was a police officer too?
No. No.
Okay. So now this hopefully is legible. Can all see that?
We can see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So we've got our contingencies that we have listed in the budget. This is the current Gen Gov budget, and I can show you this on the other page. That's our total expenses. I had to list these two so they would tie up. These are some capital funds in general government. But we didn't, we tried to separate the capital and general government from the operating budgets. And these were two values left in general government that were part of capital. We've called them out separately. We've called out the fire department map, and we talked about the engineering, the drone, the survey equipment. But just to make all the numbers tie, I had to present them here. So this number, which is our bottom line, where revenues and expenses equal, we get to a zero value budget. So this is a sheet that as we go, and we have changes to whatever this value, or anything else, Ed will input those here. Our goal is to get back to a point in time where we have a value here, the council agrees, and we can explain by virtue of any of changes listed. We'll put descriptions over here, and then after council meeting, Ed and I and Michelle will go back and input this information into the system. But this won't be dynamic and live. That'll have to send me this periodically in order for me to bring it back up to show you. And again, not that one. We don't want to, these are the two. So with that being said, let's look really quickly at the general government budget in its summary form, and then I'll go into the details. So the general government budget, which is Department Org 1003020, this is the FY20 information. We had $49,800,000 in revenues, expenses of $4.1 million, and net funding of 45.7. So that's just the revenues less expenses. That is one in here. This is all revenues and expenses. Just in general government alone, that's $1.9 million better than last year, because we've got tax revenues going in there. We've got shared revenues going in there, offset by increased expenses for the contingencies we put in here. So with that being said, that's the summary. Let's go back to the detail in Tyler, our favorite topic of the day. This is the contractual services line, $672,385. Inside there, we'll find here is the $100,000 for the Tyler contingency. This is the $383,000 for Valley Ride. And we did verify during the break that the value from last year was $367,130, which is exactly a 4.4% increase from last year's budget to this year's budget. And that's what's built in. We have some district mental health funds, strategic planning. I think you were using part of that this year, and we wanted to keep that in place for next year. The economic incentive that I believe we have leveraged with with Best Group, and then the animal shelter. That's what's in the contractual services line.
Hold it there just for a minute.
Sure.
Ms. Lowrider. Strategic planning, help me, what does that encompass, strategic planning, for what?
That's probably,
Yeah, this past year, we've been working on developing a strategic plan, and so that was actually that helped fund Boise State doing our community survey, helping us develop that. Shannon McGuire working on developing our strategic plan. We are not done yet. And so it's helpful to have some funds set aside so we can move our strategic plan forward. We're going to try to do as much as possible, but it's kind of like our comp plan. Normally, you spend a lot on a comp plan. We've done it all in-house, and it's hard to get it all totally done. And so if we need some help in completing it, that's what that's for, as we're trying to get our comp plan redone. Normally, you spend, I don't know, a comp plan is expensive.
Very expensive.
We've done it all in-house, with the exception of a little bit of help.
So Mayor, if I may too, so on the, would you call the Tyler, that's kind of up in the air, what may be the need for that? That's
Well,
still yet to be, is that more or less a contingency fund, would you call that?
There were two rationales for putting this in. One, as I described, when we built in the budgets for fire and police, we found that Tyler had difficulty, or perhaps we had difficulty understanding how to get Tyler to manage the complex wage structures. And we ended up bailing on the Tyler approach and did a manual approach, where Ed literally went through with fire and police and calculated manually what each number needed to be. And then we used IT to help us load that manual value into the system. But because we noticed there are problems in fire and police, we thought if there are other problems we haven't found, we wanted to have a contingency to cover that. That was one reason. The secondary reason was, should we get to the end of the road with the fire negotiations and find we needed some additional funding to cover this year, we thought we would like to have an additional source of funding. But as of yet, we have no indication on either of those which way the coin may fall.
So poor terminology, but it could go different directions. And
Yes.
I know a slush fund is not
So-
a good terminology, but it's gonna.
If perchance this survives today and we don't spend it, it goes into our reserve for future years.
Unless we didn't unless we actually took it off. the
If we
hook.
axe it, then
Yeah,
it's
yes,
gone, right,
thank you. Okay,
exactly.
just wanted-
That's why I said if
That
it survives.
just very candidly, we talked about this today. What we could do to move us forward is just put this into the budget, because I don't know what the exact cost of an officer is. If it's, because we always round to 100, but this is where we need to know, is it 90?
Well, Ed was telling me this morning, it was $72,000 per officer plus $6,000 in supplies, and I think there's another $11,000 in equipment they need that we believe we can get from impact fees.
So that total was
Right at 90,000 then.
But-
90?
But if we can do the 11,000 from impact fees, it would take place outside the general gov. So what we would be focusing on is the 72 and the 6, or 78,000 per officer.
Okay, so that gives us room, which would be awesome. So the thought was that possibly we don't keep this. Right now, we had 68 for wage analysis, so we got rid of about 18 of that. So today we have 50. If that is the only thing we keep right there, just because of, and if we have an error, we just don't know if Tyler calculated right, but we could get rid of this, and then if we have to do a budget amendment, we have to do a budget amendment. And so that would give us $100,000 right there.
I like that idea, but for further discussion, Madam Mayor, I need to go through each of these. I don't know what last year's was on each of these.
Well, last year, the budget contingency was 0. There wasn't anything in there. The Valley Ride was $367,000. And the remaining line items are pretty much identical to the prior year.
And on economic incentive, do we still have funds in there from last year and past years?
I believe we I'm not entirely certain. I think we might have used that with.
And Beth is here, she'll answer. Thank you, Beth.
Mayor and council, we used the economic incentive this year with Autoval for their project. They had a 400,000 square foot, $100 million facility that we offset their building permit fees with that economic incentive for this year. If it doesn't get spent, if we don't have a project that council approves, it would go into the reserves at the end of the year. It does not carry forward.
So you currently have 0 in incentive?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I have several questions. Number one, the $672,385 from Tyler, is that already paid, or is that the budget that's going to get paid this year?
Well, the 672,000 is not it's not Tyler.
Oh,
This 672,000 is contractual services held within our budgeting system, which is Tyler.
Oh, okay,
But it's comprised of the elements listed on the screen, the animal shelter,
okay, okay, got
the economic incentive and so forth.
Okay, now also, there was an increase of 383,385 to 367 to a Valley Ride.
4.4%.
Why is that? Is this,
That's the request, the request they asked for.
okay. I see that. But that hasn't been approved.
It's in the budget,
It's in,
pending your approval.
right, okay.
Rhonda, you're welcome to tell us what that is. Thank you.
So last year, actually, our request was 373,000 that you guys approved and cut us a check for. And this year, it's 383, so it's a 2.6% increase. So,
I have 367 in all my documentation and we actually paid.
I have 373 that I talked.
It's a small difference.
Yeah. So, so basically, the increase is due to,
Go ahead and pull your mic over, sorry.
okay, it's basically we have the same increases that you guys have. You know, we have increases to labor. We are looking at increasing our fares coming October 1st. So we're looking at sharing those expenses. And then next year, when we approach this Nampa City Council, we will be looking probably for a $40,000 to $50,000 increase. Right now, all of the stakeholders within Canyon County mainly pay for just the services and not the overhead. And we're going back and looking at everything, just like you guys will be looking at your allocations. We are doing that as well and making sure that everybody's paying their fair share for the overhead. So it's mainly just increases in overhead costs, fuel, that type of thing.
Thank you.
Yep.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Does this include the dues? We had two sections in the past, some is dues, some is costs.
It is. And so this year, the requested amount for the, what we call regional assessments is $43,883. And then the local bus service is $217,281. And then the inter-county service, I had them added together, but they're about 110,000 is what we have, or 120.
For the total of,
383,
so that does
385.
equal the 383. Okay.
Yes.
Excuse me, Mayor, so when you say inter-county, not
Correct.
intra-county, are we talking about Canyon County, or are we talking about going to Ada County?
So there's the inter-county service that goes between Canyon and Ada County, and that's about 120,000. And then the local service, which is just within Canyon County, is 217,000.
Okay, and you know me well enough
Yep.
over the years that I like statistics, and I have not seen those. So I would, as far as ridership and those
Okay.
type of things, I don't know if this is the time, Mayor, or another time, or how the council feels, but,
I actually have an answer for
okay.
you. You are
But-
going to like
So is this okay as far as time-wise? Okay.
So we just installed this spring automatic passenger counters. So they, Boise wanted those installed so that they could tell. And based upon the money that they put in, we were able to match it with federal money from the small urban area. So all of the Canyon County buses got outfitted with them as well at no cost to Canyon County.
I like that.
Yeah. So they were installed this spring, so I should be able to, I'll talk to Leslie Pedrosa, who's our new operations director, and we can now be able to tell, I know that they've been working on it, where people are getting on and getting off.
Okay, but
So
you
we can-
you have no figures for the past 6 months even, or a year?
Well, they just got them, they just got
Well, you said
installed.
you got it in the spring, so, okay.
Right, we
I thought
installed-
maybe March, I thought maybe you would have 3 months with it.
I will talk with Leslie and see where they're at on them. I know that they've also installed enunciators, so when you're on the bus, it will actually tell you what the stop is. So they've been doing all the programming on that in the last couple of months. and
Okay,
it's
so
all
in the past, you've at least guesstimated
Right.
as far as, how many rides. The one thing we were not able to really get down to was actually individual riders. So are you able to at least guesstimate the number of rides you've had in the past, I don't care, 3 months, 6 months?
Yes, we can
Going,
tell,
going from Canyon County to Ada County is what I'm
we can
interested
tell rides, but I can't tell you riders.
in. Right, so you can give me rides now?
I can give you rides and I can tell you where they're getting on and where they're getting off.
Okay, I would be interested in that before I vote on this, so,
Okay,
okay,
I
thanks.
will have that for you.
Mayor.
Just some other things are, we do have mobile ticketing now, so people can use their smartphones if they'd like. And then, our on-time performance has been improving. We've been doing some time point changes, and our inter-county ridership has gone up. Our local ridership in Canyon County has gone down because the amount that we requested last year, we didn't get the full amount, so we actually had to, cut some service, so that is the reason for the cut in the ridership or the drop.
Thank you, Councilman Haverfield.
Just a quick question, since you're standing there, is I've been informed, or I guess I came across information that Valley Regional Transit has a contractual relationship with First Transit. Is that true?
Correct, so we outsource the operations and First Transit operates the vehicles. Valley Regional Transit, we own the facilities and the equipment, but First Transit actually operates and provides the drivers.
So you manage their work in a sense.
Yes.
Okay.
Contractor.
All right, thanks.
Just a couple questions. One, Doug, I guess there's a discrepancy because you're saying this is a 2.6% over the total, including the dues, but on the line item, it says 5% increase. Okay. 367. That's what the contract was. Okay. The second question I have is, you know, we read the paper and see that other communities, namely our neighbors, Boise is looking to make perhaps massive investments in VRT. What I'm wondering is if the operational expenses increase because of the investment of one entity that's traveling in our entity, how does that affect your ask to us?
And so that's what our planner, Stephen Hunt, will be working on, is that he'll be looking at how we should be allocating overhead, and it will all be based upon the miles that are done in your community and the bus stops. So if you're a smaller community and you don't have as much, then it will be based upon, you'll have a smaller percentage of the overhead costs for that. But we'll also be looking for, we used to receive a rebate from the federal government for operating compressed natural gas buses. That rebate has not come to fruition this year. We always used to use that as the local match for capital in Canyon County. And now, since that isn't here, we'll be looking for local match from the Canyon County stakeholders.
Okay. Is that recent news?
Yes.
Okay. If I recall, I know it's separate. Is that the same item that Republic Services was returning? You know?
I don't know if it was.
Because I think it was passing on grant money from
Mm-hmm.
some sort of gas usage in the engine. But anyhow, separate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So Mayor, any other municipalities besides Nampa, Caldwell, is Middleton at this point using Valley Ride?
Yes.
Okay, any other municipalities in Canyon County?
Middleton Star, we get funding from Canyon County itself. We also get, well, I'll be presenting tomorrow to the Canyon Highway Districts as well. And Wilder does mainly regional assessments. And that's all I can think of off the
I
top
know
of my
you
head.
said on routes and of course and so on, so I'm just curious, what's our comparison of contribution compared to Caldwell? Do you know that offhand?
You guys are probably about, they're probably, I guess I would rather send that to you rather than guess.
Okay.
So, and I can do
I
that.
can't remember right off. We just looked at it
Yeah.
at an executive board meeting, and I don't remember it right off the top of my head.
Right, but I can
But
forward
you
that
could-
on so you can see.
Thank you.
What's
So-
the sorry?
Go ahead.
What's the amount? Do you know the? I would like to see that amount as far as
What
what
I'll,
other entities like Caldwell's. You mentioned Canyon County.
yep, so what I do is we have a sheet that shows everybody for Ada and Canyon counties, and what is their regional assessment, and then what is their service contribution.
In Nampa Highway District also, or no?
So I'll just send the sheet, it's public record
Okay,
and stuff, to the city clerk to be forwarded on.
Or if you could even send it, you can send it to city clerk, but also send it to mayor@cityofnampa.us. I will have TJ print it and bring it out to us. So if you can do it and just, just as soon as you can, send it to mayor. I'll let TJ know to print it and hand it to us.
Okay.
That way we'll have it and we'll have the comparison.
What, I'm sorry, Mayor, what timeline are we talking about for this request?
Probably a few minutes.
Yeah, I can have
Okay.
someone send that.
Mayor Kling?
Yeah.
One more question. Are you requesting an increase to every city and county
Yes.
this year?
Mhm.
Okay, and then this 4 point, I first put down 6%, but it's 4%. Are you basing that percentage on our usage? Is that what that is?
The 4% is based upon the budgets that we have put together and such. We have maintained our numbers while our services have grown. And so in order to cover our costs, we are requesting a 4% increase from all of our partners.
Oh, from all of them.
Yes.
Wow, so that'd be what, 16% from Canyon County? Oh, from all the, like Caldwell, Middleton here?
So our overall budget is a 4% increase. And so each stakeholder has a 4% increase in their request.
I see. Okay, thank you.
So one thing that you just touched on that I think is important for us to realize, that we actually have benefited from Boise's investment, because their match is what caused us to have the capability to have what we're needing. And this is a minimal increase. And as I listened this last year, after we did not fund and we cut services to our community, we have people, and they're the neediest in our community, that are relying on this transportation. If we cut, I feel like it's important. It's a minimal increase. I feel like it's important that we fund VRT. We may not be growing at the same pace. We want to be good fiscal stewards. One thing that I can say is that I've appreciated the improved reporting that has been coming, even in the financial reports. And so VRT is going the right direction. Sandy, you also sat on the board, and I don't know if you'd like to comment, but I've been pleased with the improvements that I've seen, and I think it's important. Councilwoman Levi.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things. Earlier this year, I was at the Legislative Committee for the Chamber meeting, and I really appreciate it because Stephen Hunt and Kelly came to present to us. And one of the things that we had not seen in the past were some really solid numbers, but also to understand the qualification and certification of Stephen Hunt. He has an MBA as a planner, is that correct? Yes. And I never knew that. And I think to maybe some of us on the council, we were maybe not, I don't know the right word I want to use for it, but looking at it as maybe not as respectfully as we should have when they presented information to us, even though I know we had questions. And I do appreciate just the change in the meetings and the information that is being presented to us at our VRT meetings. I was telling Councilman Rodriguez just shortly ago that I happen to stop by on bus stops when I see people waiting for them if I'm able to stop. And I introduced myself as councilwoman and also on the VRT board. And one of the things I asked them is, how do you use the bus system? Why do you use the bus system? And many of the people are here because they've moved here from out of town, and public transportation was their main mode of transportation. And so several of them have echoed the very same story. They come here, they get employment, but they're limited by their employment by the transportation availability that we have through VRT, because that's their main mode of transportation. The lady I was just speaking to on Monday at the post office, she moved here from Alabama. And she said, I have a choice. I either am going to have to save enough money for a bus, I'm going to have to walk, or I'm going to have to find a different job, because after 7 o'clock at night, I can't work. And on the weekends, I can't work. So what am I supposed to do? And as I speak to more and more people that are coming here from these larger cities where public transportation was just a way of life, that is how they got around. So I look at this investment that we need to be thinking about our future, the people that are moving in and those future needs. And as we see what's happening on I-84, even though that's exciting, I don't see that that's really going to fit our needs. And we need to look at transportation not as a a stigma or a stereotype on riding a bus, but making it fun. And again, I have some ideas that I'm hoping that we'll be able to do some things that present to our community that riding the bus can be fun, and it can also be cool in collaboration with some of our small businesses. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, well, and then I'll be quiet, guys. You can take over, I promise. My main thing is why I want figures from here to Boise, et cetera. Because I'm all for here in Nampa. And I see help wanted signs. I realize there's different job levels all over Nampa. And so as far as getting people to stay here, not be on the freeway, and to work here in Nampa, and to have bus service to be able to do that, I am totally pro on that. That's why I want the figures still going over, because I don't really want to incentivize people to work outside of Nampa if they live in Nampa. Is that making sense? That's just me personally. So that's what I'm looking for.
I want to, oh,
No, I fired,
Okay, so it's going to be Councilman
Okay,
Hogaboam
yeah.
and then Haverfield, Skog?
I think
or-
I'll be
okay,
quick. I think I'll be
Skog's
quick.
3, okay,
but I'm always,
okay.
mine always. So I think last year I made the motion to cap the request at 3%, 2 or 3%. And that was kind of a philosophical principle. I don't question necessarily, the merits of the request. It's more a philosophical issue. So you've been attending, you see how we're struggling with even lifting just the budget capacity to 3%. That's divided over, of course, our taxpayers. And so I still don't like the idea of a request that's in excess of that. That takes a chunk, albeit it's a small chunk in a big budget. It's more a philosophical issue. So I want to limit the increase over the 367, 130 to 3%. And if my math's right, that takes it to 378, 149. And I know that might just be a $5,000 variance, but it's more a philosophical issue on our standpoint, because I don't know how that 5% is allocated. I know that there's pay raises. I'm sure that those pay raises were there, but this is Gen Gov funds, and they're the same funds that we have to use, apart from enterprise funds for pay raises for employees that are in enterprise funds for Gen Gov obligations. We have challenges just to try to get COLAs for our own employees. So there's just a certain pot of money that we have to work from. So that's where I'm coming from as far as, so the 378, 149 number is the 3%. That's a good faith. It's philosophical. It's not like I don't like the job you're doing. That's just where I'm coming from on that. The other, I would like more data to quantify. I get the transportation equity point that Councilwoman Levi is trying to bring up, that there are people that are in circumstances where automobile might not be accessible, and they need transportation, especially because of the layout of our community. There's a lot of sprawl. And I've always felt that our community isn't laid out for efficient transit. We're not built up like Boise, where you have mass density and then a shift to not accommodate parking, because there's actually a shift where parking becomes a premium, and then there's an incentive to use transit because parking, gas, and all that. We're a community that allows that. But if there's traffic mitigation, when the numbers go down on ridership, because I'm also willing to view this as an investment, it's hard to quantify. We're investing in streets to try to accommodate traffic flow. If there was more riders, that's fewer cars that are on the road, that contributes to traffic mitigation. And it's another way of not just the social equity standpoint, but traffic mitigation. Where I've struggled is to, how do you combine all of those aspects to try to get some sort of value number and what our contribution is, where I would feel better knowing this is what the investment is and this is what the return on investment is, not just from the helping people who have challenges, but I also know that food, I can get McDonald's to show up here probably in 30 minutes if I want. So I know that there's a lot of goods and services that are coming to the doorsteps of people. And so that there's a different model. I've talked to people in the medical industry who said that there's even shifts and changes in how care is going to be administered, forecasted, that's less dependent on transit, just because of the way we're moving. And so I'm also just keeping an eye on how technology and how shifts are occurring with transport of goods and services. I understand, I don't know if you know, do Medicaid recipients also receive included in that medical transport?
Most of the Medicare transport.
Medicare, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, is done through Treasure Valley Transit. They do most of that. But our specialized transportation services have increased exponentially, and we are partnering with St. Luke's and St. Al's, because what they find is that if people miss appointments, it actually costs more money down the line. So we have a Rides to Wellness program that they fund the local match for that. Metro Community Services, which is in Canyon County, could use as much money as we can possibly throw at them, and we throw as much as we possibly can.
So we basically give you the money, and then you make executive decisions on your board and how money gets distributed to all these entities. And what I think I hear from fellow council members, at least Darrell, I speak maybe based on what he said, is we'd like a line item sort of preference within that. And I know that we can't maybe just give you the money and tie it just to the appropriation of those things, because you're your own governing entity making decisions. So, but what percentage of your budget is based off what you get from municipalities?
We have about a $15 million budget, and I want to say that probably, I can get those numbers broken down prior, but I would say at least half of it is local money.
And then the rest is it
Is
federal, state?
It's federal. There is no, we receive
There is no
no
state.
state
Did there used to
funding.
be state contribution in the
No,
past?
there has never been state funding, to my knowledge.
Are we maybe one of the few states that don't provide
We're-
funding? Because I think most states do.
Correct. We, Idaho and Mississippi.
Right, we're one of 2 states that do not from the state. Okay, thank you, appreciate it. All right.
My turn?
Thank you, yes.
Okay, so as I try to struggle with understanding all that the VRT is, I just know from a city's standpoint, we're looking at a lot of internal reviews to try to reduce or eliminate duplication, possible redundancy where necessary, unless it's backup of our IT systems. So when I look at the cost efficiency of hiring another transit company to do what you're doing, so you're basically have the state contract, provide an oversight role for their work. Is that correct?
So VRT there's Kelly Badesheim is our executive director, and then there's myself, I'm the development director, so I'm over planning, design, construction, maintenance, and then Leslie Pedroza is the operations director. So she does oversee the First Transit operations and management account, but she also oversees our IT department, our customer service, and then our specialized transportation, which has mobility navigators and helps people do that.
So
So
how
there is-
how many actual employees are VRT?
There is probably about 30 VRT employees, and there's probably between Ada and Canyon County, there's, with the drivers and everything, there's probably about 90 employees at First Transit.
But they get their checks from First Transit.
Correct.
So again, I'm trying to understand more the role of VRT. You have the contract with the federal government, they don't. So why doesn't someone like First Transit come in? They can't because you have the federal contract. But
So-
they're a national entity that they provide this service all the way across the country. So is there an efficiency in you providing the service that they could provide, or is that not a possibility?
So to my knowledge, we are a regional public transit authority, so we are a regional governmental authority
Uh-huh.
and stuff. And the federal government typically will give money. We are a designated recipient, and there is one other regional public transit authority, I want to say it's Idaho Falls, and ITD, and we receive funding directly from the federal government. I don't know of any private company, which First Transit is, that receives funding directly from without going through a competitive procurement process. So the money comes from the federal government to VRT, and then we operate as efficiently as we possibly can.
Sure. As do we. So that's why we scrutinize what we give out, because they're precious dollars, no matter where they go. So if you could include in your presentation at some point in time an understanding of a better transparency of how you interface with First Transit, I think that would be helpful. As I'm asked questions, because again, bus drivers are getting their check from First Transit, not from VRT. And so that's seems a little bit awkward, but it is the way that it is. So, but thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Councilman Scogg, yes.
fellow council members, You're a trooper, because you weren't going to make a presentation, were you today?
I was not.
So you just got called out of the audience. I'm okay if you sit down and relax. I just want to talk to these council people. And if we have questions, we'll call you back up, but thank you.
Thank you, good
Yeah.
job.
I will step out, but I will be back and get the email.
Let me just say, you've been a real plus since I first came on this council
you.
for representing VRT, even though you know I'm at odds at times, but you are a real plus, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mayor,
I should,
Let's go ahead, we'll let Ron just, I know what you're going to share. Feel free to, please.
I am retiring.
Oh,
Yes. So, my last physical day in the office will be August 9th, and then my last day with VRT will be August 16th, so
So do you know who your replacement's going to be yet?
I do not at this
Okay.
time. But if
And I'm pretty forthright. I would appreciate though, whoever your replacement is, to be the person representing also. I'm not real fond of your director at this point in time. Okay. Not personally,
No, I
just
understand.
from a professional
I
standpoint.
understand.
Thanks.
I think that probably Leslie Pedroza, who's the operations director, we each take certain communities, and I was assigned Nampa, so I think she would be a good fit for the city of Nampa.
oh, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman
Happy retirement.
Levi was that for something
that's
for
what I
Rhonda?
was going to say
You were, okay,
about her retirement.
okay, perfect.
So, okay,
Thank you
you.
so much.
thanks, guys.
Thank you. Councilman Scott?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fellow council members, in the 6 years, this is my sixth budget, every time we've had to dig out VRT from the budget presentation, it's never showed up where I could actually read it. I have to ask for it every year. So future years, have that out for us, because we always want to see it. And I've never had valid, objective data from VRT that's complete, ever. When we ask questions, we dig down and they don't have it. And so that leaves us with subjective review of what we see on the street. And what I see on the streets of Nampa is empty buses everywhere. I've never seen a full bus in Nampa. I've never seen a half-full bus in Nampa. And I travel the community pretty regularly. So I don't think there's much demand. Usually it's one or two people. But then what's the valid purpose of us as government, using other people's tax dollars? Police, fire, public safety, streets. It's not to give people a ride to work or to the mall or to the doctor's office from our tax dollars. That's my view. So, I mean, I'm okay with what they're asking for here. But the demand just isn't there subjectively as I look around at the buses in Nampa. There could be an opening for private sector. There can be other openings for other avenues for people. And I think Councilman Hogamo's comments about other ways to get services is very valid. I have a client right now who sees a doctor every 2 weeks by video in Salt Lake, and that's the way it's going. That's all.
Thank you. So shall we pause on this, unless there's further discussion, shall we pause this just long enough to get the information to bring it back? Or does council feel like they would like to move forward without receiving the information we've requested?
Can we segment this at all, or is that not efficient way of doing it?
When you say segment,
I'm talking about of these general gov funds. I mean, my understanding was there's at least 4 of them. At least I personally would not have any problem in O'Kane. But as far as the Valley Ride and the budget contingency Tyler are the two that I probably would not be ready to vote for.
Mayor Clean.
so you can do what, you know what? You can do
Well, the
whatever
president,
you want.
I'm
What
kind of
would
looking
you
at,
like to
I'm
do?
looking at the
Yes.
president.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I make the motion for the ones that we're agreeable on, if you want, that they're,
The ones that I'm agreeable on.
that you're, well, we're probably all there with you, Tom.
Mayor Clean. I think that when we are crunching on our pennies, and I personally cannot vote at this time on on this transportation stuff because I don't know the numbers. And I also agree with Councilman Hogabone and Councilman Skog on the necessity. So I think we need the facts and numbers. Everybody else has to present them, and I don't think we should move forward other than that. Yeah.
Mayor, council, my understanding is we could always reduce the budget further, right, in the budget process, but we can't add to it. So I guess my concern with leaving a couple items out is whether there's a mechanism to add them back in
Well, we'll just do it on a little bit. We'll come
a
back
little
and
bit.
revote.
So I would be okay, well, I'll just make a motion. If it fails, it's okay. My feelings won't be hurt. So I make a motion to fund this request with a revision to the Valley Ride portion to be 378,149 instead of 383,385. That's my motion.
So it's to approve the entire budget, or are you going to pull that contingency out?
Just those, the contingency leave in because from my understanding, we can cut back later unless,
Or reallocate it?
or my motion dies for lack of a second. It's fine. I'm just trying to move us forward one way or another.
Yep.
No.
Without anybody
No
giving a
second.
second, can I add to your?
Sure.
idea here? And I don't have to get a second either. So I move for approval of what's listed up there with the number Councilman Hogaboam gave for Valley Ride. But on the contingency, I would like to not approve that because I see that down the road getting us some police officers we all want, I think we all want. And I'd like to use those funds for the police officers.
Second.
Question?
That wasn't a
Okay,
motion.
well,
Yeah, that
you
was my-
actually.
I made it a motion, so I
So
seconded
since
it.
you made a motion, you have amended
died.
his,
However,
so we
it
let
gets
yours die. Okay, so yours officially died. That was a motion. Okay, I just want to
Yes.
make sure, Robert, you know that we're,
And then I seconded that.
Second.
okay,
All right, to move things along.
thank you.
We can have a conversation.
Okay,
We
are
can
we
check
good?
that Number again.
So the number is $378,149. And so the motion was to approve the budget as is reflected with the change in Valley Ride to that and contingency fund being removed.
Well, only approving what's up on that screen.
Right, what's up on the screen. Right,
With-
so let's just say animal shelter, 75,000, economic incentive, 75,000, strategic planning, 30, Southwest District mental health, 9. Valley Ride would come in at $378,149. That's your motion
Yes.
to approve.
No, that was my second. That was my understanding. Yeah.
In discussion, I will not, I will not be voting for that 378 at this point in time, so.
Is there any further discussion? Councilman Haverfield?
Yes. So we're just talking about the GenGov capital expenses. We're still going to be going over the economic development, P and Z clerks.
Yes,
those
this
are-
is strictly what's on that screen.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Rodriguez?
Just for the sake of moving forward, I'm going to go say yes.
Brunner?
No.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Hogaboam?
Yes.
And Scott?
Yes.
So how much did that save us? 100 and,
11.
5,000, right?
how much?
5,000?
111.
Wasn't it set 378? And you had 383.
1119. 11119.
Get the microphone back here. Ed's indicated that's 105,000, what,
Oh, yes.
to 379
105.
some odd, 379 what?
378,149.
Yeah, no, you're correct.
And rounded 105.
105.
105, 378, is that what you said?
So we got about 1.25 officers now. Okay.
Well, and back to that discussion, when you gave us 70-something plus,
72 plus 6, 78,000.
was that including benefits? Is that
Yes.
salary and benefits? So the total amount we would need for 2 officers or 1 officer would be how much?
For two, at 78 would be $146,000.
Okay, thank you.
Say that number again.
No,
I'm sorry.
that's not correct.
That's not.
Or give the single unit cost.
78 No, 156,000. 156,000.
It's 78,000 per officer.
So
Is-
156,000 for 2.
Is that correct?
Okay. And then the car kicks in, 1 per 2? Is this considered in the capital cost?
That
That'd
would
an
be impact fees
fee.
for a new,
I think is there only like 400,000 in impact fee? Police? Or do you know what the amount is? So how many vehicles? That only gets us 3 vehicles. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So is that in a
So-
motion or not?
Oh,
That's not in motion.
information gathering.
Okay,
No, it's
We just voted.
information.
Mayor,
okay.
okay, so yes, Councilwoman Levi.
thank you. I'm a little bit confused because when we're talking about just the 78 or, 78 base for the officer, is that including, I thought we added up to 90 just a little bit ago.
So let's come back and
I
Brad or
can-
Chief Huff, I see head shaking, but let's really be clear, because this is very important.
Sure.
Can you go back and
Let
review
me,
that?
let me reiterate what I spoke earlier. 72,000 is labor and benefits. 6,000 is ongoing supplies, basic uniform stuff. And then there was $11,000 of fees we believe we can get, the operating gear, long-term, we believe we can get from impact fees. That would be approximately, what, $89,000? 89. Yeah.
So the one thing that I'm absolutely not comfortable with is I believe we can.
Yeah.
So I would like someone to call Ann Westcott and say, is that 11,000 allowable under impact fees? Because we can't be making a decision based on we think we can. So do we know that that 11,000 can be covered through impact fees? It is in the capital improvement plan. That's what counts. If it,
No.
but the 11,000 is for equipment. We're not talking vehicles, I'm talking equipment. This 78,000 is wage and benefit, 6,000 is supplies, and this $11,000 number that we're saying we believe can be covered by impact fees. What is that 11,000?
So that was designated for vehicles. So there's actually, we figured it about 21,500 per officer that's hired. $6,500 of which is uniforms and other equipment. About $4,000 of which is their radio and stuff through 911. And then the balance of that was set aside for vehicles. Now, when that originally was done, I think we were at 1 for 4 or 1 for 3. And so at 1 for 2, it still fits the capital improvement plan. That number could be higher, but that is the basis of where the 11,000 came from.
So then what I'm hearing is that we know for certain that one officer, because these are entry-level positions, correct? And that's what, I know you're hiring experienced officers. Are they still coming in at that entry-level wage? Okay, so you feel. Okay, so, because as you know, we're making this really tight, and I just want to make sure that we understand what we're doing. So you feel comfortable with saying that one officer is going to cost us $78,000?
Comfortable? No. But I think that puts us close enough that with the natural delays there are in hiring. there's
Like
always
1
a little
month?
bit of surplus. I mean, a month makes a big difference.
Okay.
And so that is, I mean, I'd like to see that number a little bit higher. And I apologize, maybe I should.
Yeah. I think we at least ought to round it to 80, because we're cutting it way tight.
And I think the difficult thing for us is if I hire a guy from another agency who's got 20 years, they're coming in almost maxed out. That's considerably higher than 78,000 with wage and benefits. And we don't know until we make that higher. Whenever we budget, we don't budget entries. We try to budget kind of middle of the road so that we have that buffer one way or the other. We are testing all the time for both experienced and inexperienced. We do like to hire inexperienced because a lot of times what you're getting is a 30-year employee, and that's a good thing as a 30-year employee. So we want that, we look for that, and they're certainly less expensive when they come in. It's really not predictable. We don't know. These last 5 we hired all had experience. They were all on the lower end, so they weren't real expensive, but they all had experience. They were all above that entry level. So does that help at all?
It does. So, and
Okay.
for me, at this point, it's all about the numbers. And so it's looking for the number. That number that we all agree on that is the right number.
Mayor, did we get it, the car is under impact fees or not?
Mayor and council, as far as impact fees go, we've already determined that for all growth employees in police, that we can buy the car with impact fees. Those are in the current CIP for police. So
How much, do we have the funds though? So right now, if we were looking at a total of, I'm trying to think how many out of these, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 officers, or is it 9 officers plus the 2? If 9 plus the 2, okay, does each one, or is it 1 car per 2? So we need at least 4 vehicles. Do we have the funds in the impact fee fund balance to fund the vehicles, new from impact fees?
I would have to defer to finance to look up that amount in the current police account.
Okay. And Doug, thank you, thank you.
And just to clarify, as long as all of those are growth positions, if it's a combination, it's only for the growth positions that we can use the impact fee funds.
Patrick, Mayor, Council. The CIP was set at 1.2 a thousand, and I know that this hiring will increase our level of service, and impact fees can't be used to increase level of service, but that's graded over the entire tenure amount. So there's a certain officer limit that we'd hit at 10 years that
You got a Magnum.
impact fees have been collected for that wouldn't apply. Is that your understanding?
Mayor and Councilman Hogabaum, that's my understanding. Actually, we do have in the CIP, in the recently adopted study, it shows exactly how many officers are considered for
Yes.
growth and then how many vehicles are in the CIP. So unless we go back and amend that, we can buy up to that number of vehicles.
Another thing that just stuck to my mind, because you said 1 car per 2, and if we're talking about 9 officers, it would actually trigger that 5th car for the 1, which would be inefficient. I see Doug shaking his head. So 8 officers it would be the same number of cars that we'd have to buy. The 9 would actually tack on another vehicle, which that's kind of a new fact that I just wanted to confirm. Okay.
Mayor, for clarification, yesterday, we approved 5 new officers, 2 support staff. Now so that's a total of 7, but only 5 are on the street, correct? So now if we add 2, that's 7, not 9. It'd be 9 with the 2 support staff. People, do they get a car as well? Okay. So it's just the 7 sworn officers.
Councilman, they're asking for 9. That's, I think, where,
Right, but we're not there yet.
no.
Okay.
You're just saying in
Just trying to count the
case
cost.
of.
So
I
to
just
trigger that
I just
extra
wanted
car.
clarification of where we're at this point.
We're actually, and Doug, did you have a comment that you'd like to make?
Mayor, if I may.
I'm sorry, Doug Adams,
Yeah,
excuse me.
With 9 officers for fleet health, I'd highly recommend the 5 vehicles, as Councilor Hugman said, being that the CompStat shift, they added a shift, and there's 4 shifts instead of 3. Very, very highly recommended. Also, if one of the additional positions approved yesterday was an additional CSO, that would also require a vehicle at a much lower rate, though, probably about $25,000 for a CSO vehicle.
CSO, what's that
A
acronym?
community service officer.
Okay.
So that their support staff.
Do we have any existing vehicles that we are pulling out of service or anything for that CSO? And did we budget a vehicle in for CSO in our budget?
I don't know the one was budgeted. I'm pretty confident we could find one though for this interim year. We had-
Okay, thank you.
So the answer is yes, they have it. Thank you. Okay. So actually where we were, just to come back, was we just are trying to clarify a number. And so these were clarifying discussions. So are we landing at 78,000 as the number we're going to use? Or are we at 80,000?
I'd probably feel more comfortable at 80,000.
It's just easier to round it to 80. So we're going to say that 1 new officer is going to cost us 80,000. So I think that was good to get to, and so we'll move forward from there. Okay.
Madam Mayor, I like that idea, your suggestion at 80,000, thank you. I'd like to just cut to the chase because the bottom line is, do we want the additional 4 officers and can we get them? So here's my understanding, if we bring in 4 new officers and we don't bring them on until April 1, then that is going to cost, how much? What's the number?
160,000,
160,000.
right? It's 100.
Four more would be 320.
Oh, yeah, 320
Well, no, but if we bring them on in April,
in April. Yeah,
half
that's right.
of
So it's
320
half.
is 160.
Okay.
And
Right.
so it cost us am I correct on that? 160,000 to get 4 officers that
Half
we
a year.
hire in April.
Then we would need to okay that for the
Right.
next fiscal year,
It
though.
would, it would, yeah, have an
would
increase
be in the budget.
following year,
Of course,
correct.
that
Another
carries over, of
160.
course. If we,
Can we do that as a
So-
council?
Well,
Because we're encumbered.
we've done it before.
it's not a debt
do
encumberment. It's just like anybody we hire, you're assuming
I know.
they're, yeah.
We're making decisions for new council members coming on.
And if we're trying to stay at the 2%, which I think most, if not all of us are, then there's the 380,000 out there, right? So if we designate that, how much of that to police, then where are we?
The number you just said, that, the 105, I'm sorry, what did you
Oh,
just say?
no, the 380 that we haven't officially designated yet?
Well, we
I thought
actually
we
did.
did
vote
yesterday.
on it.
Did we?
That was
Okay.
yesterday.
There's a motion.
Oh, that's right, okay.
So it's done. So right now, we would
That's
need
right. Sorry.
160,000 and we have 105.
Okay, and then I think there was a position that Councilman Rodriguez was maybe going to nix to help the police. Which one was that?
I think that was the code enforcement.
What's the value of that? That new position on code
I
enforcement?
believe
it
it was about
30.
52?
Yeah, 52.
52?
So let's just talk hypothetically. If that's the one, Councilman Rodriguez?
Let's see, actually, it's, the pay was 32,074 with benefits, 24,566. It'd be 56,640.
56.
56.
640, right?
So add that,
161.
add that to the 160. If we do that, I'm not advocating or saying that that was an idea of Councilman Rodriguez. And then we have a deputy clerk coming in, and I'd ask Doug and Mayor, well, what if that deputy clerk came in half year, April 1, is that doable? And I think is that correct?
I don't,
That's at 54,330.
Well,
right. So yes, I think that we could postpone the hire a little bit. And the reason we're talking, just for the rest of the staff sitting here, since they're all sitting here, is that Deborah Rosen will be retiring. We're trying to do succession planning. And so her retirement, I think, is out far enough that we can postpone that hire a little bit and absorb that to where we can save half of that, which I believe was with benefits, is that 80?
for the year.
For the year, because with wage plus benefits.
So that'd be another 40,000. So,
Actually, it's 54,330, Bruce. You're right, right. Okay, half a
Well,
year.
54, but when you add benefits, the total cost is 80?
That's correct, right.
Right.
80,150.
I'm doing math. That's scary. Okay.
Well, that's $201, 201,000, I believe, right there. Actually, we'll
That's
achieve,
256.
105 plus 56,640. I've got, right now, we had the 105,000 that we identified. We have the 56,640 would be code enforcement. That would be that position.
Got it, sorry.
That's
160,
160,
correct.
1,000. And then if we did half of the clerk and push that back, so we will achieve 160,000 right there.
Right there.
Okay,
If we could, the other thing we could do is do, well, but we're making it a commitment. Code enforcement, we could push back the hire. We could push back the hire and clerk, and between the two of them, we would still eventually get the positions because we know we need them, but we wouldn't get them at the beginning of the year.
Right, that's correct.
well, and I think to make it happen, Councilman Rodriguez it's the code enforcement position is an entire year away.
Right, is
No
entire
hire.
year.
So that gives us, give me that number again, those three?
The three together is 201, I believe. Is that
That's
correct?
about right, yes, very, very close.
Okay, so if you would help us, Doug and Ed, if we did those things, where are we? We still have lots of things to discuss, but if we did those things, where are we on 2% budget roughly?
Let me address one of the questions you had first about the fund balance for the impact fees in fire. They are at $480,000
In police?
in police, pardon me, in police, that's correct.
Say that again.
$480,000 is the balance. Now, fees keep coming in, so that's going to do nothing but grow between now and the time we hire these, so it will get a little larger. And if an individual vehicle is 60,000? 62, 5 times 6 is, $300,000, a little over that. So you do have the money in there to cover 6 vehicles,
I'm a little
or
concerned
5 vehicles.
about the comment, though, that I think Patrick just made, and that is that if it's, we have to justify if it's growth or if it's getting us to the 1.5. If it's service getting us to 1.5, impact fees will not cover those cars. If it's for growth, it will. So we need to ensure that we have the vehicles or a plan to deal with the vehicles, depending on whether this falls under growth or the quality. So can you speak to that, Patrick?
Mayor and council, I pulled up the police CIP, and over a 10-year period, we're looking at adding 26 officers for growth, and that's at not increasing the level of service at all. So basically, that's 2.6 officers per year. You obviously don't do a 0.6 officer. So if you hired 3 officers in the first year, or however you want to hire those officers, it's in, as long as we can have a defensible stance, if we have the money now to hire X amount of growth officers to get ahead of the growth, and we have the money in the CIP fund to pay for it, I think that it doesn't have to be just a rigid formula every year. It can be, we can have some flexibility there. So we have $630,000 budget in the CIP for growth vehicles, which is $63,000 per vehicle, which add a little bit of inflation in there. And
Over 10 years.
over a 10-year period.
So we're going to have to be thinking in the future about how we deal with vehicles as we continue, because there's, you know exactly what I'm saying. It's absolutely something to think about.
Yeah, because I think that funds 13 vehicles. So even if we jump ahead 1 year, it's only funding over 10 years. So if 26 officers, that'd be 13 vehicles. Once we hit 13, anything in excess of that can't be used by impact fees.
Right.
Because our CIP was modest based on the 1.2.
Just
Okay.
one other comment. I asked Michelle to go check with our clerk, Debbie Robinson, about a 6-month window for training for succession planning. Said it's doable, not her preference. It's a complex job with a lot going on, so that would be a council decision. She would prefer longer if she could get that.
Well, I don't believe she's retiring, though. Was the question asked
Yeah.
in such a way that she's asking for a 6-month window? This would be longer than a 6-month window, much longer.
It would be, depending upon when she retires. So if she doesn't retire for a year
She's
and a
not
half-
retiring immediately. We just need to be hiring and doing that transition because the clerk's position is very, very important.
Yes.
So,
Councilman Skog asked a question on where we were at in total relative to the,
Okay.
if I heard you right, Councilman, yeah, 2%.
Okay, beginning the day, we started out short $56,000 because of the shift from the 911 position to the IT. We've covered that by taking a little bit of that 380 from the police, which I think we substantiated here today. If we have 80,000 per officer at 4 officers being, what is that, $320,000? And I have 300, that's at least 60,000 in there that we could use. I'm planning on using less, probably about 40,000 of that use, and then 20,000 from our $68,000 contingency. That covers us for yesterday's shortfall. So I've covered that. Today, we have talked about adding 4 more officers, I believe. Is that correct? We've only talked about 2 right now, but if we take the current discussion, we've saved roughly $201,000 in cost reductions today, coming from reducing the contingency, eliminating the code enforcement officer, and delaying the hire of the deputy clerk's replacement. That's a little over $200,000. So that means that we are up $200,000 until we actually approve the hiring of the additional police staff. Now, if you hire 4 staff mid-year, that $200,000 is enough to cover 4 additional staff for 6 months. That means we're roughly back to neutral and staying at the 2%.
Hey, That helps everybody understand?
One more time. So I kind of like the mayor's idea as far as maybe just delaying the code enforcement officer until, later in the spring. But Councilman Skog, you're not even,
That's next year
Right.
to make this work.
Right.
Well, I'd like to, could we actually ask Beth to speak to that? Because Kent Lovelace has been reporting to Beth. As we move forward, code enforcement will be reporting to Chief of Staff in our office. The reason for that move, they will be moving over here, they'll be very close. And with the citizen complaints, code enforcement, risk management, all underneath Chief of Staff, so that's going to change. But right now, they're still reporting to Beth, and I'd like for Beth just to speak to the request, the justification for the request, and the postponement.
Sure, Mayor and Council, this is a position that's being requested that was eliminated during the recessionary times. So I went back just for some historical context. In 2005 was when I could find some good census data that matched staffing levels. So we had 6 positions in 2005 doing code enforcement. At that point, our city had 67,000 residents and a lot less land mass. So we have gained by 52% in population, and we have 16% less staff. That's still required to cover the entire city. The team does an excellent job in trying to make sure that they're providing good customer service, that they have a really high voluntary compliance rate. They still take complaints via email, via phone, website. Unlike some of our counterparts, Canyon County, the only way you can file a code compliance complaint is on their website. You never get to talk to a person, and you have to complete all of your contact information. We still take anonymous complaints. So this is kind of the level of service we're trying to provide. With that, our team, on a per officer basis, handles over 500 cases a year. When we looked at Boise, Meridian, and Caldwell, they all average 300 cases per year per team member. So I don't think we can ask any more of our team. What we'll do, and they've already established kind of a priority ranking for things that they're responding to. And what we've really talked about is that at a certain point, we will have to stop being as customer service oriented as we have been. We'll need to stop either taking complaints via phone or requiring that people leave their contact information or something like that, just because we can't get to everything. They have a very high level of what they want to perform at, and it kills them when they can't get to things right away, and they really want to be able to be out there dealing with the complainants as soon as possible, and they're just not feeling like they're getting the work done that's being asked of them. And it's hard for that team because they really do have a heart for what they're doing, and they want to do a good job.
Mayor and council, as far as, and there again, I'm not talking about tons, but the most complaints I get as far as from individuals is not because of the job your folks are doing, is it just there's nothing happening after a person asks for somebody to come out and look and they're not, to me, what I'm actually getting, maybe it is to a certain extent, they're not getting a response, or they don't know what the status is. So to me, I'm not in favor of totally eliminating this position.
I agree with Councilman Bruner. Some of the most common complaints I get is a downgraded service and people complaining when the customer service decreases, they're not happy with us. And they feel that, when people are aggravated, it's not you have a short window of time to try to respond. My dad's one who sometimes isn't happy with code enforcement calls, and the response time is sometimes not what it is. So it's one of the things I hear about. And if that was included on top of the savings we have, it might be 2.15%. And if that edges us over like 2.15% or something like that, I think I would be okay with that. Although that would take us over 2 by a little bit.
Mayor and Council, I would add too, obviously the spring and summer months are their busiest time. So in my mind, it does make a lot of sense if you're trying to shave off a portion of the year to not hire this position until April 1st. It's when the sun comes out in March and people suddenly are outside and they see everything their neighbors have done all winter, is when our call volume really ratchets up.
Yes.
Can we get them to hire fireworks too?
So we could do one of two things here. By postponing the hire of clerk till April, we've gained 40,000. With the 105 and that 40, it puts us at 145. The officers are at 160. We're only 15,000 off.
Yeah.
And what I would recommend is pull 15,000 out of our legal budget. We could just pull 15,000 off of our legal budget and we're where we need to be.
Point of clarification, just to make sure we're all on the same page with the officer. I was conferring with Ed for a moment, and he wanted to make sure we had the right value. We said $80,000. My intent was 74,000 in labor plus 6,000 in supplies. I don't know if that's your intent. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. And I'd like to get Brad's input. Should it be $80,000 plus $6,000 in supplies, or $74,000 in labor and benefits plus $6,000 in gear?
It was the 74 plus 6.
I had 72 plus 6 initially, and then we wanted to have a little.
Rounded to 80. I
To
just want to
80.
make sure we understood what 80 meant. 80 means 74,000 in labor and benefits plus $6,000 in supplies. Okay, all right.
You can make it work.
Mayor Kling,
Yes.
so when we say we can make 160 work, is that for the 4 officers mid-year? Okay,
And that's on top of the additional 4 we approved yesterday.
correct.
Yes.
Aye.
Well, the one that was already included, and then the other 4 on top, so.
Right. That's a total of 9 now sworn.
Right.
So we're there, we could go home?
If we agree, so when I say take 15,000 out of, you have already been conservative in the legal budget.
Yeah.
Do you feel like we can be, that, I don't know what their
Let's
budget
just
to actual is.
let's look very quickly at it, and you can make the
Thank you. We do have an increase in legal wage this year. It's moved from 150 to 165 in our contract. But our total legal budget's, it's close to $1 million. It's a lot.
The total legal budget last year was budgeted at 1.152 million. This year, I'm slightly less at 1.14. I can bring up the components of that. In fact, let me do that right now.
Mayor,
Yes.
so we had 105,378 for the Tyler, and whatever else that was. We had 40,000 for the half year for the clerk's office. I thought we were talking about half year for the code compliance. Wouldn't that be half of 56?
Yes,
25.
if we just delayed it for 6 months.
If we delayed it for 6
Right,
months.
so that
Or,
would,
yeah, so that, you could do it
that's
that way. Or
173,698. So
And
we're
you're
actually
there.
over the 160.
if you decide to do it that way.
Okay, that's good.
That's what you'd suggest? So then we're good.
Let's keep, to be clear, that's keeping the code, just hiring the second
Mid-year.
person mid-year.
So the legal is on the screen. The monthly retainer is the new monthly retainer at the increased rate proposed by Hilti. We have prosecuting attorney services with Canyon County that includes a 2% cost, not a COLA, but a cost of services increase that's factored into our multi-year contract. And then we have the remaining $201,000 of coverage for the unexpected. So if we took 15,000 out, we still have $186,000 for unexpected coverage.
There you go.
Well, so that would allow us to,
Yeah.
it would allow us a little wiggle room, but it would also, what I'm thinking on that code enforcement position is, right now, we have 5 positions that we've got to come up with this 160,000 plus, we've got $200,000 that we have to find budget for next year, because that's next year's increase.
Say that again,
So.
for next year, I was doing that number too, because that would have to be included in the
Without
the
code.
percentage, without code enforcement.
So
Well,
if we
no.
went ahead and
Clerk,
funded code enforcement.
code enforcement, the 4 officers.
15,000 off.
Right. But
We'd
out
start-
out of the 4 officers, you wouldn't need to purchase the new vehicles next year, again, 'cause you've already done them this year, that value.
What I was thinking on code enforcement is, if we budget it, then the budget's there. We're really at $200,000 that we know that we have to come up with next year. We may not hire the position, but at least it's budgeted to roll over in a position, because right now, we have $200,000 that we are going to have to add to our budget next year.
Yep.
So I just want us to be mindful of that. I like the direction we're getting there, but
And that's already a half point next year that we would
Yes.
have to assume,
That
just
we're
based on the
committed.
operational costs, because we're timing. things. Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Scott?
We got some other, don't we have to
We,
okay some
other things to discuss, but are we in general agreement to go this direction to get our police officers See thumbs up?
If we can do, if we
Yes.
keep it at 2%, which we
Around
just
there.
decided, right?
Right.
Okay.
Councilman Levi, I'm just looking for thumbs up. Okay,
Yes.
all right. Okay,
Fist bump?
So what would you like to address next?
well, I think other
like to
council members want to look at things, and we need to look at the mayor council budget. I just have forgotten what's happening there as far as personnel, and I need a refresher.
We'll open it up. I actually, candidly, I'm not prepared to present the mayor's budget because I'm so busy looking at the whole thing. So
Make
we
it up
can
to
just,
it.
so basically, if you look at the mayor's budget, we have an increase of approximately $58,000 over last year. We do have a new position, which is an executive assistant. That puts us at an increase in salaries, I think. I'm not sure why I'm showing an increase of 58, yet I have an increase over the FY19 budget of 46. Doug, do you mind pulling that up and tell me what the difference, because I'm not seeing another line. So it's an
Oh,
increase in
individual, but you're-
Percy and,
Yeah, your total budget goes up $58,944.
that is wage plus benefits.
Wage plus benefits.
It's wage plus benefits is basically the biggest increase, and it is an extra position in the mayor's office.
Yeah.
That is not the base wage is not that, but when you add the benefits in,
Yeah. That's really the only change in the mayor's
the
budget.
biggest change.
Just take us through, I've asked you, Doug, to take us through the last 5 years, and I looked at those numbers on my phone, that of the overall mayor council budget or mayor's office budget, just so we can see our history.
While he's finding it, I do have a document I can share with you guys that's just showing some wages, and I can run them. We did some comparison with the Meridian Mayor's Office. Chief of Staff position wage, communications manager wage, some of the wages, which we definitely are under the wages, with the exception of the entry wage. Here, I'll just pass these over, then you can ask me any questions you might have on the wage scale. So, we certainly don't have an overpaid staff.
Mayor, just to confirm, you have 43,493 on your assistant as salary, 24,060 for benefits. Should be 67,553 total. Is that right?
That's what it's showing,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
That's what it's showing here, but it isn't necessarily reflected
Well,
quite the
it
same.
is, but given that we've changed, and I'd have to look back and see exactly, but I believe part of the answer is because we've changed the way we allocate benefits by department. Instead of a flat average across every department, now it's specifically charged. So you'll have a degree of natural up and down across the departments just because of specific identification.
And I will say, we have an increase in staff over the prior mayor. It's just a reality. But the positions that we've added serve the entire community. I mean, the entire city, not just our office. When you look at the role of our chief of staff that will be providing the oversight not only to the risk management, but also to code enforcement and complaints, and really assist with the entire city. And then the communications manager provides assistance to the entire city. I mean, it's just, she serves the entire community, the entire staff, and the city. And the same way with Kristen's position, as she's moving into complaints and working with, serving as a liaison between our citizens and our departments. So all of those are really non-mayor's office functions. They're actually functions that help the city run. So,
Understood. Madam Mayor, Doug, could you blow up, or Ed, blow that up just so we can see that top yellow line? I just want everybody to see the history, and our community's grown a lot.
Okay.
Maybe you can go through that to make sure we all understand we're reading it right.
So what we have here are actuals beginning 2016, 17, 18, This is just a partial year, so that's why it drops down. We don't have all the data in there. This is the budget for the 2019 year, and this is the current budget for the 2020 year in terms of regular salaries. So the increase from here to here is due to the additional salaries or wages for the additional staff requested in the mayor's office. You'll see a corresponding increase in Percy and in health insurance related to support that position. The remaining costs up and down here are very relatively flat. IT is 13, 14, very, very flat. Contractual seasonal labor as they need it. Most of the remainder of these costs are very much in line with prior years with small variations here and there. So the only real cause of change is just the additional staff and the volume that it supports.
Where's the actual budget number for each year? Because I know it was different from some of those past years than what we budgeted, higher or lower, I don't remember which.
The actuals are on the top, so 16 is actual, 17 is actual, 18 is actual.
That's salaries though, right?
Right, that's wages.
That's in that line item.
I'm looking at the whole mayor office budget. Where's that
Well,
line?
if you want the total lines
Yeah,
down here
that's
at the
what I'm
bottom.
looking
So we got the total mayor. This is 16 actual, 17 actual, 18 actual. So there are modest increases between years. This is just partial year. The budget increased here for whatever the approved budget last year to 415, and again up to 415 to 474, which is primarily 99% the additional staff requested.
And we do have 2 additional staff. Since I've taken office, we have 2 additional staff.
So are we going to stay within budget for 19?
Yes,
Okay, that's,
yes, we will.
thank you.
This is not council included, this is just mayor, right?
That's just the mayor.
Mayor. Well, Mayor, Council, to move things along, I okay with the proposed budget for the mayor's office as proposed. I make a motion to accept it.
I'll second that.
Oh, Victor's gone.
We have a quorum.
Okay, so shall we go ahead and vote without Victor? Okay. Is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez? Oh, he's not here. Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Bruner?
Yes.
And Hoagland.
Yes.
Now look at that council budget now.
Those guys are out of line.
Well, there was a
Yeah.
$3,000 or something increase. I want to know who's getting that, so.
Well,
Well,
Where was that?
sorry, you've overspent by $3,700. I'm going to have to take it back. You've increased just modestly, and that's just due to the cost of living, not the cost of living, but slight changes to healthcare primarily.
And Doug, excuse me, Mayor, so Doug, so these are actuals, I mean, as,
It's
like Councilman
budget.
Rodriguez and I do not take health benefits, so that's included in that, right?
Right.
So there should not be any
The-
increase, at least from a third of us here. Okay.
If we had added you and Councilman Rodriguez back, there would be a substantial increase in the.
Because of our liability and our experiences, yeah. My foot surgery, right?
It would go up.
I wouldn't have been able to have my foot surgery, you would have shut it down.
What-
Okay.
By substantial, I mean an individual, it might be as much as $30,000 higher.
30,000 per
two people.
individual?
Per,
For
no,
two.
for two. Probably
two.
less, but it might be as much as that.
it's 15 per,
Yeah.
13 to
It's
15
worth
per.
over
individual.
$1,000 a month, just
Okay.
on average. because
So
of our pool.
did we get everything in the council budget this year since we didn't last year?
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
we did. The travel's in there.
If there's an increase, it's because we failed to add some items last year.
Madam Mayor, fellow council members, there's an organization, I think it's ACCE or ALEC. It's the more fiscally conservative group and compared to the National League of Cities. And I've encouraged you all to attend one of those, or one of you, I hope, would go, and that should be paid for by the city. I know Councilman Hogabaum went to one thing. I've gone to one thing in 6 years in Denver of that, and it was very valuable. You get to hear a more fiscally conservative or libertarian view, but it's a recognized organization backed by Ronald Reagan when he was alive. It was good. You got to hear presidential staff speak, vice president. and sit in with people in a room of about 40 people with the vice president of Uber. And he tells you what's coming in your city and what to expect. And that helped me with some of my transportation views on VRT. So I would hope next year one of you would go to that. So I just hope that's in the budget somehow.
Mayor, Councilman Scott, is that not where you cannot get those presentations online? I don't know of too many seminars or conferences anymore where you cannot at least have the online after the fact.
There's a value in sitting across from a CEO of a company like Uber or CC, one of those top people, and exchanging ideas and being able to follow up. For instance, at a city council woman from Austin, I was able to follow up.
Where you and I, sir, are in disagreement, I understand there's a value. I just don't think it's a high enough ROI to be spending money at expensive motels and so on to be doing that from a taxpayer standpoint.
No, it's Motel 6.
Just to provide clarity for the council budget, there actually was a decrease in health insurance because of what I mentioned earlier, specific identification. It went down from about $81,000 to $74,000. That's just because we're specifically identifying who's getting what benefits rather than doing an average. That also reflects inclusion of a travel budget of $5,650.
How much?
$5,650.
Travel for council? Where are we traveling?
Well, I
It's-
couldn't tell you. I'm not-
That is attendance, for example, AIC, that covers attending AIC meetings. It's reimbursable travel if you're doing travel on the road. And it would allow the attendance at a conference like that. It would be good if more than one person, and Councilman Brenner, I so respect you, and I know we're in a little bit different page on this, but one of the things that I find at these conferences is the learnings that come from relationships. As you mentioned, it's sitting across the table. I will say one thing that we did not add to the budget, because we did not approve the service line agreement, we don't have a membership with NLC. I did not add that to the budget. I knew you'd appreciate that, Bruce. I know, but I did decide to go ahead and mention that I didn't put it in the budget. But one thing I can say is, if you visiting with Garrett Nancolis, he's been very, very engaged in NLC. The access to grants, most cities say the return on investment on those dues is high just because of the online access you have to grants that get released and learnings and sitting in rooms where you actually can connect with people. Since we're not a member, we're not able to do anything more than just attend. You can't really get engaged. So to move forward, what I have found over my career is I've gained so much from personal relationships that I meet across the country where you sit down and talk to people. When I've traveled, the one thing I found is that the other cities have their city council members present at these meetings because the learnings that they bring back that you can apply in your city, it's extremely valuable. Education's important, and a lot of it, I wish you could get it online, but you really can't, a lot of it. And so many of the presentations are not videotaped. You can grab a PowerPoint, but you don't get anything between the lines. So I think it's important that we're fiscally conservative, but we budget and we take the opportunity.
Okay, Mayor, one more on my soapbox, just a little. I agree, because you focused, if you're you got to plan and discipline yourself if you're going to watch something online. I don't necessarily agree that 90% of things cannot be found if you Google it or whatever the case is. The other thing, though, that before I get off my soapbox is, if it's informational and you're networking and gathering information, fine, I guess I can see one person going, or a council person and a mayor, or whatever the case is. But to have two people from the same department attending a conference where it's mainly informational, there's no reason in my mind why that person cannot bring back the information that they think is valuable, and then also spread that out to their department or whatever the case is. For two people, I realize if they're rooming together, then there's only one cost of a room. But I tell you, from an individual standpoint, I think we have to be more careful with the money that we're spending, because it's taxpayers' money, than for our own personal use. And I think that philosophy needs to be maintained, that we are actually more conservative with who's sitting out there and beyond than what we are with our own personal funds. And I'm not sure how many are going to pay for conferences just to go and get educated. If you think it's a wonderful return on investment for the citizens of Napa, that's fine. Somebody needs to value that and decide. I would just scrutinize it totally and for all departments. And make that decision, but I'm just think you got to be very careful with taxpayers' money. So that's it. I'm off my soapbox.
Yeah, I hear Councilman Bruner's concerns and best practices, I think, not to abuse the line item. I'm with Councilman Skog and preserving the line item. If it goes unused, then that's fine. I don't think Councilman Bruner is going to go on any conferences for what I could discern.
No, I've been to conference,
Yes.
and I see benefit, but I also say, hey, when I come back from my budget standpoint, from my own personal NNU business, did I get what I really needed, and did I really put into action what I learned, or got too many other things to do? So.
I have a thought, just to help take us down the direction of the accountability. One thing I noticed in the Boise City Council agenda was on the consent agenda was the mayor's travel schedule, and budget was on the consent agenda. And so what we could do is actually bring forth travel and put it on the agenda so that both the mayor and the council's travel would actually be an agenda item. It'd just be included in the consent agenda, so it would be visible.
Well, you get a lot of things already paid for or partially paid for when you go, which you've announced, which I appreciate. I understand. I'm talking to Chief Huff today, and there's no one going to be in the police administration, I understand, here next week, but it's all paid for, right? Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want to do that in July?
Good barbecue.
So I appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, Madam Mayor, I think that's an excellent idea, but maybe you can do that across the board on travel, because we'll hear from maybe a citizen, so-and-so is going on all these junkets around the country, but they're good. I think they're good, what's happened, and the travel for staff, but maybe that we could do that on the consent agenda, just so council can see, oh, they're traveling, and then ask questions if they have them.
Good idea.
The timing of that we'll have to work with, because if there's any likelihood of you guys questioning it, it'll have to, because you are
Oh, 'cause
booking
you've already
6 months
booking.
out.
Well, it's more of.
But
just to know-
FYI.
Yeah, just to know,
Okay.
to know.
Okay.
Yeah. So I make a motion to approve the council budget as proposed.
Okay.
Second.
Third?
Third.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Bruner,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Hogaboom.
Yes. Oh,
Hogaboom and Rodriguez.
Yes.
yes.
Question, Madam Mayor, Council. Maybe we can just cut to the chase a little bit. If any council members have something they want to talk about cutting that they've already looked at, then we could go into that from what the budget presented out there.
Excuse me, Mayor, I stepped out for a moment. What was, your budget was passed, right?
Yes.
It was approved, I mean?
voted while you were out, and I apologize.
Okay,
We
what,
did.
what,
We did it when you were.
I know, that's why Rick is the liaison for us. Anyway, what was the amount?
Didn't we do the budget as presented?
As presented.
As presented.
Oh, okay,
So it's budget as presented.
okay, good.
No
Right.
change.
We're good.
So mayor and council are the two budgets that we have voted on. We still have clerk, code enforcement, economic development, legal, and planning and zoning.
And and do we still have the segment of general gov regarding Valley Ride? We haven't
No,
voted on that.
No, we
we
voted on
actually
that.
Oh,
did
you-
vote on it.
And I was the only no on that one, right?
Yes.
All right.
So those are
Okay.
done.
No, someone else would. Were you? No, I think someone else would.
Planning and zoning doesn't have anything to speak of,
Mm.
right?
I thought we were could at least have further discussion, though. We couldn't increase, but we could cut.
Yes.
And I thought there was further discussion that she was going to give us some numbers
Wait,
for,
At the next meeting, if we approve the budget to be
Okay.
presented and published, you can still cut if you want to.
Proposed.
okay, and then we can have, as far as those figures from Kenyon County to Ada County, et cetera.
And
Yeah,
is
they're
that
right
what this is?
Okay.
Yeah.
And we
I did-
remove the contingency, the Tyler contingency. So that can't be like that. Economic development, do we want to do that, maybe?
So,
Oh, sorry.
question, what did we do with all the figures for the police department and the other thing? You want to do that?
We got that done.
Well, we have to
Well,
make a motion to
yeah.
approve. the
We had to
board
make
notes.
and I think Bruce made the motion, right, Bruce?
Well, not for the final budget
No.
yet.
No, no.
Shall we,
But I'm just
We're still
asking
doing
to
other
move things
items.
along, if any of you council members have, or mayor, have something you would like to cut from what's out there anywhere. I don't at this point. but
I don't
would
either.
Listen if you have something.
what I was gonna cut has already been discussed and taken care of.
That's when I can see it.
I have a-
I
quite
had
bit.
a question on economic development. There's a 2000 and 2002 vehicle replacement. That's for, go ahead.
Mayor and council, that's for code compliance. Those
Okay.
are the two vehicles for code compliance.
And since we're timing, well, you still have to purchase the other.
Those are
or
replacement vehicles.
Replacement, that's right. Okay, that's fine, that's good.
If we ended up with a new officer, we will probably keep one of those and then in 21 would ask for it replaced.
Could I ask a question of Doug Adams?
While Beth's up there, I can,
She's-
she can come back.
You
Oh,
had something
well.
for Beth?
I was just wondering if you plan on getting, well, either one, I mean, Beth or Doug, within our fleet service program, are you going to be able to supply two vehicles or one half of a used one, or how do you propose that?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, throughout the fleet, we can probably find a vehicle that will last at the 6-month period that we need it to. Even if some deferred repairs are performed that we wouldn't normally do, as long as it's fiscally responsible.
I see that the cost was 25,000 per vehicle. Do you get those on, like, at the bidding, or do you go brand new, or what do you do?
We usually buy out a state contract for light duty vehicles.
Oh.
Idaho state contract.
Oh, okay, so it might not be 25,000 after all, then.
That's pretty tight on a vehicle that the code enforcement can be used as effectively. To be 25,000 at the bottom rung, about 25 to 28, about usually where they land for that type of vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Kling.
Yes.
So Beth, if you could come back up. I just want to ask about the Main Street Program Coordinator. When this came before the NDC, maybe even here, we talked about the split being two-way with NDC. The question I asked was, is there a possibility that it could even be split further with a downtown business association, since they're the ones that are primarily benefiting by the Main Street emphasis? I didn't get that answer.
Mayor and council, what's proposed is that it's a 50-50 split between the city of Nampa and the Nampa Development Corporation, each contributing approximately $35,000 to create that full-time position. The position really is much broader than just it is not the BID employee position that they have had in the past. And one of the things that we've had a lot of discussion about is that we don't want it to become that. The BID has a whole set of administrative functions they need to do, and they have been providing that with their board of directors as a working board. And there's event planning, there's the coordination of flower baskets and all kinds of things that the BID has responsibility for and does. And we didn't want to just replace that with a city staff person and have this person not end up doing the hard work that needs to be done through the Main Street program and really create an effective Main Street organization structure. And so that was a kind of a deliberate decision that the mayor's office and our team made to really focus it on being funded through the city and NDC and creating a kind of a detailed job description and format for what the position will do. We don't want them to be an event planner. We don't want them focused on the BID pieces. We want them focused on creating a community-wide grassroots kind of Main Street effort.
And that's what I would have hoped it would be, simply because when you look at the community in a whole, and their focus being more generalized as an economic developer, it's not just driving to downtown. Otherwise, the BID needs to be involved with that from a financial standpoint, but they'll benefit. Now, this Main Street coordinator working in economic development, they're going to be working parallel with you as far as on seeking economic opportunities out there or businesses. How does that work? Or does it diminish your role, or does it basically give you another ally in the field?
Mayor and council, it essentially increases our team. The person will report to myself. They will focus on the economic development efforts for downtown. So they will work closely with the downtown property owners on helping to fill vacancies. They'll look at what's our target mix for businesses in the downtown and recruiting businesses into that. I spend next to no time on restaurant recruitment and retail recruitment, just because it doesn't bring the tax base that you guys need to be able to run the city. So this person will be able to spend their time doing that type of work that's really important to create a great quality of life in the community. We just don't have the capacity to do it without this new position.
So will there be an RFQ that's sent out as far as to try to solicit someone of quality to come in? Or, I mean, is there a designated person already in mind?
In terms of business recruitment or employee recruitment?
For the
think more
position.
For the
For the
position,
position.
it would be opened through the regular city HR process. I don't have any individual in
Okay.
mind for it, so it would, certainly we would advertise it out through the community. We would advertise it probably through our state association and, any job postings that we can.
And Mayor, just one last question. So do you think the capability of finding someone to come in with, that can be boots on the ground with you, trying to solicit economic potential, is their focus going to, you said more on the smaller businesses, not on the larger scale commercial, industrial type users? That's where you'll be still involved?
Correct. Right.
Okay.
And their focus will be more geographic based, right? So, I mean, I cover the entire city and area, and this Main Street coordinator will be much more focused on that downtown district in terms of that business recruitment strategy.
Okay, so it wouldn't be necessarily out towards Gateway or Treasure Valley Marketplace. It'd be more focused in the downtown core area?
Correct.
Okay, from an NDC standpoint, we'd like to see areas within the NDC geographic area being focused on as well, but that's not the case here with this individual. That's your goal.
Right, right.
Okay.
So myself and then certainly Robin is in our office that helps with the broader piece. One of the things that we're hoping to achieve with this new position coming on is that will free up some of Robin's time that she's spent on the downtown. She has a background and expertise in working with entrepreneurs and getting her much more engaged in that sector and working with the small businesses throughout the rest of the community is what we're hoping to be able to achieve.
So have we cleared through legal yet for the NDC that this position can be partially funded by the NDC?
We've had conversations. I'm not sure that we've received a written opinion letter. I don't know that we've asked for one, but
So if we approve this, it's maybe with the understanding that it could be a mid-year appointment then if the NDC is for some reason unable to help participate in this. If we haven't made that decision yet for the NDC, how can we be, we're banking on the NDC coming in and helping to pay for this person.
and Mayor and Council, the Mayor and I have discussed kind of contingency plans. If we get funding from half and not the other half, there might be an opportunity to not have it be a full-time position or to even look to developing a contract type of relationship with somebody who can provide the services as a 1099 type of contract instead.
So it's just a nice transparency thing. It's not cleared through NDC yet because we still need legal opinion on it provided to the NDC.
The NDC board will vote on it next week.
Okay.
So I guess that lets us know that we need to get that piece of information cleared for that meeting. So, good questions. Are there any other questions for Beth? And any other questions for, this was actually the economic development, right? Or did we start with code enforcement? I can't remember where we started on this one, so.
So Mayor, are we allowed to just go ahead and have an up and down vote as far as on all the remaining departments that we have not voted on? Or does that need to be done separately? What's the protocol?
It can be done all together. We'll just, what I would
Can we have a
probably,
listing of what our balance is? Yeah.
well, as far as the balance, so
I mean, as far as what different departments we have not,
So it's my understanding, and then you guys can, at finance, can make sure you're tracking this, but it's my understanding on the clerk's budget, if we were to move forward with an approval of that budget, it would be with the deputy clerk position being filled in April, which produces a savings of approximately $40,000, postponing that. Code enforcement, we would be approving the budget, but remind me where we landed, because in my, that's half year. So code enforcement, we're approving that position, which, for a hire in April, which is a savings, I'm saying approximately $28,000. That economic development would be approved as presented. The legal would be approved as presented, and planning and zoning would be approved as presented with no changes.
Okay, if that's the comprehensive list, I will make the motion as stated by the mayor.
Second?
Just for clarification, the number I had was 173,698 was the savings,
Yes.
So we have a second, we have discussion, and
which is going to be applied towards the hires.
Do we want that as part of this motion? Because we could actually
The officers?
go ahead and, you know what, let's do that in two motions.
Yeah.
Let's do that in two motions.
Good idea.
Just before you go there, may I make one comment? Ed's tracking the numbers. We're about $7,000 short of where we need to be. I trust Ed, he's got a good grasp of numbers. Unless you have a problem, I would request you allow us to go through and find $7,000 to pull out of a budget at our discretion, just, we can find it.
Before we vote, though, I'd like to make sure, because we're all on the same page up here, so if we've got something different, we need to figure out what's off. So can you tell us, the only changes we're making are to code enforcement and clerk?
Here's where we saved $5,246 from VRT. We bring in the $380,001 for police that we had reserved. We reduced the Tyler contingency by $100,000 and earmarked that for police. We reduced the clerk's office by $40,000 for a 6-month delay in hiring. We have reduced the code enforcement department by $28,320 by delaying the hiring of a code enforcement officer. We have spent in personal services in the police department $456,000, which brings us in 4 officers in October and 4 officers in April, plus personal equipment and support costs for those officers amounting to $48,000. Okay? We have spent $56,024 to bring over half an IT position from 911.
Right.
Okay? I have to increase development services by 300 and some odd thousand for the vehicles. But that leaves us in the general fund short just about 7,000.
Okay, so this is difficult because how you're getting to your end numbers is different than how we voted. So when we voted and approved 380,000 to go towards police,
Correct.
what was the actual, I'd like to segment this based on how we voted because it's very difficult to track it if it's segmented differently. So, because we are all in agreement on the 5,240 whatever, 100,000, the 40,000, the 28,000. Where we're getting a little bit questionable are how you're accounting for the officers. So we want to account for the 1%, those 4 officers. We have allocated 160,000 to those officers. For the 1%. And then we allocated 380,000
Right.
to the others.
60.
Mayor, I'm tracking the grand total. I know that if you're going off,
I'm just looking at it, so I'm just trying to figure out where we're off,
So-
because,
so Doug, I thought the 380,000 was an over budget.
discretionary amount within
Right.
the two.
It's in there, but I thought that was actually allowing for more than 4 officers.
It was, and the way Ed phrased it, he may not have called it out, but
I see, that's right.
From the
And you had already stated
Did
that.
you put I think it was about 18,000 from the, that's why we're off.
Okay, that's fine.
And that's what we changed. And we had already approved that, so we don't need to find another 7. We're done.
Okay.
In fact, we have more than we need, so we're good. Okay,
Okay.
good.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Council members, it sounds like if we're in that understanding, somebody just needs to articulate where we can pass the entire budget with these changes now.
So we have a second though already on this, don't
It's been moved, I believe. Did we have a move? Oh,
I heard we had a second, but I.
we? Yeah, we had a second.
Yes.
okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Who seconded?
But, okay,
But not the officers, because you had suggested 2 separate motions. So this was all the items that you had listed.
Correct. This was a motion to approve those, the clerk, code enforcement with the 2 changes, economic development, legal and planning and zoning,
Yes.
as
Right.
we've discussed. And so that's been moved and seconded. And then,
so my question then is, that I was gonna ask, was that we're approving the budget as presented with a 2% cap, with the difference of $173,000, $173,698, that I guess the second motion will use that to apply for. So as long as the motion is clear on the amount that we're diminishing it by, so that it can be used for the other. So
okay.
if we're on the same page with that, which it sounds like we are.
Okay, so the motion was made by, who made the I'm sorry, do you,
Bruner had made.
Darrell, did you make the initial one?
Yes, I did. I so moved as you stated.
Okay.
So
So
I
are
didn't-
you good? And then who's our second?
Was
Councilwoman
I'm trying to
Levi.
look at yours.
Councilwoman Levi.
Okay, your second's here. So, just so that who made the motion or approved the motion and seconded agrees with Randy's comments
Clarification.
that the reduction in that is based on
Right.
the allocation to officers. Okay? Is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Vogelbach?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
And Bruner?
Yes. Yep.
So my understanding is what that motion was, is it approved the cuts within those budgets that now free up, as Councilman Haverfield pointed out, 176 to stay within 2% that we have not yet approved for officers,
That is
which would
correct.
be the
Right.
last
It's
remaining
actually
budget.
We provided
70.
money with an understanding of how we would arrive at that.
That the savings. So we could go ahead and vote on that. The only other thing that I want to make sure that we have confirmed is that our capital requests were all approved, that we didn't miss any.
Yeah, well, in fact, Brad just reminded me that we actually need to approve the impact fee request for the new vehicles related to the acquisition of the new officers, which would be $310,000 coming out of impact fees, but it still needs to be approved
Yes.
by the council.
Well, and we have another impact fee. Do we have another impact fee line item that we needed to vote on besides that?
Not for the police. I think
Is that the only one?
we've gone through impact fee funds for other departments, but not for the police.
Okay, because we've got, okay. I just want to make sure that we're not missing anything. So let's-
Can I ask a question, a chief? Chief? I know you've been sitting back next.
This is his twin brother.
Twin brother. No, that's chief. On the vehicles, because it would come out to 9, we would just have to do 5 vehicles. I was just curious, before we make the motion on the impact fee appropriation, do you have an odd number right now where so we would do 4 vehicles instead of 5 vehicles? Okay. So next year, I guess what I'm trying to get at is if we were to hire 3 next year, we'd still have to do 2 cars, or can we do 1 because there's 1 car for a single person this year that could roll over to next year?
That's it.
You'll look at it.
It just caps at that 13 number for the growth on the 26 officers.
Oh, yeah, no, I get that part. I'm talking about the hiring. So if we had hired an additional officer right now, it would still be the same number of vehicles.
Right.
if we hired one less officer, we would actually kick out a vehicle if we hired 8. I'm just trying to be efficient with that extra vehicle to make sure that we're not doing a vehicle for one person this year and another vehicle for one person next year in an odd hiring year, odd number.
Well,
No,
can't we
okay.
retain, because we're replacing a couple vehicles, aren't we? Is there a way that we could actually retain until we hire that next person and then bring in a new one for the one for 2 later?
Well, Mayor and Council, I would say, normally I would say yes, but this year, we're getting rid of all but one of the final Crown Vics in the fleet. And those vehicles are just unsustainable. We cannot maintain them anymore. So that's, normally I would say we probably could, but this year we're getting rid of, so it's one
I
of those.
can understand
Yeah,
that. It's taken a long time.
I have a personal request. When you say goodbye to that last Crown Vic, can we do a little ceremony? Just 5 of us? Okay,
No problem.
all right.
Mayor, if I may, just one quick point. We will need to order all of the vehicles up front at one time because of the way the manufacturer operates and the way like cutoff dates are for this year. So even though we're postponing some hirings till April, all the vehicles would need to be ordered at one time, just as a point of note.
So council can just drive those until.
Yeah.
You could be the officer until we replace ourselves.
Well, they see a
Yes.
vehicle like that, people slow down.
Yes, that's true.
Okay,
All right.
so it sounds like
Well-
we have 2 more action items. And
Yeah.
so do you want to do I think in the appropriate order, we would need to approve the officers first.
Yes.
So-
I make a motion to approve using, I'll just, whatever the cost, I'm not going to come up with the cost, four officers, to hire 4 officers in this budget.
I'll second.
With an appropriations out of impact fees for the vehicles needed.
I'm
Councilmember
sorry,
Lee?
was that a mid-year hire? Is that the way it was
Right,
stated?
in April.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the understanding. 4 officers
Mid-year.
in April, and yeah. You get, Brad's and Chief are nodding that it'll work. Okay, all right.
Now, who's,
My second? Yes, so Sandy second.
Sandy second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any additional discussion or clarification needed?
I just want to, before we vote, make a statement that Councilman Rodriguez has been a real advocate for all 9 of these police officers, and no one has been objecting or upset about that. You have the support of this council and mayor.
Can I say something too? What we're voting on is adding 9 new officers and still only increasing our budget by 2%, not the allowable 3. I think that's a strong statement to the rest of the valley, that it can be done more efficiently if you just take the time.
I think we're actually under 2%.
That would even be better.
176 over the.
Thank you, Bruce.
And let me just state, because Captain Daniels, I appreciated your comments as far as not taking from someone else, but hopefully you feel good that we actually have not taken from other departments and so on with this, most of these actions. I'm sure the other departments appreciated your statement.
Okay, if there are no further comments or discussion, roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Brunner,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
and Hoagbo.
Yes.
Okay, and then I believe the last vote are the
Pre-
impact
pre-
fees
yeah,
for
the-
vehicles.
Oh, I
Mayor.
I bundled
I'm
it
sorry.
in.
We
Mayor.
bundled it in.
So,
for
so we've,
impact.
Yeah.
that's it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
We
Well,
just, we need the overall budget.
You did
Right.
budget it,
We
yeah.
did it.
Okay.
Did you,
But-
so did you, I didn't hear that you formally approved all the remaining,
For the impact fees, just for the police was all.
Okay.
Do we have to do other impact fees?
well, we've discussed planning and zoning. I don't know if you formally approved it.
We
We did.
approved in one motion, the clerk's office, code, mayor count, well, they were already done, economic development, legal, and P and Z.
Okay.
We're all
Did
in
you-
one motion. So
did
what are
you-
we missing?
Finance.
Oh, my.
Well, now that we used and abused you for 6 months or
Now- now you want-
whatever.
Now you really want to beat me up. So I mean, I had to call it out because it
Good
hadn't
grief.
been addressed.
So do we also need a comprehensive overall budget vote or not? For everything, or is that not the case?
We already did everything but this.
Well, I know we did individually or whatever, but you
We
don't
have
need
the
a.
motion to publish, I think, too.
That would be a question, and I'm sorry, I have to defer to the clerk on that. So if you don't know, Nate, it might be good for you to grab Debbie
can grab
and ask her to guide us in the next step of what we have to do on budget. I would appreciate that.
You didn't ask for anything big, did you? As I
No,
recall.
my budget goes up slightly, but it's all due to planning for additional training costs related to Tyler.
But it still fell within the 2%,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yep.
And I think that was the goal.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we approve the finance budget.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? And you don't want to present, huh? There you go.
Good.
Okay, roll call.
Bruner,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes,
and Hogeville.
Yes.
thank you.
No, I didn't make the motion, but that's fine.
Made the motion?
The vote still count. We all voted yes.
Darrell made the motion.
Our voices are the same sounding age, we're.
Corrected now.
Okay, so at this point, we just need to confirm that we have not missed anything else. I am so sorry. Good grief.
We have one other item, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Besides, I think we do need to make a motion to publish if we approve this budget, which it sounds like we have. We need to discuss foregone, whether we want to disclaim this 1% or not. The mayor and I differ on this respectfully.
We do.
We still have lots of money in possible foregone. I hope you never use it. But I'd like to make the motion that we disclaim this foregone that we've worked hard to not take.
I'll second that.
Discussion.
Yes, please. I'm just waiting because I would like to discuss, but thank you.
Where are we going?
I don't,
This is for this year. I mean, that,
Just for the
yeah,
1%.
yeah. I mean,
The money's still out there, the 4.2 million.
Trump's still president. Okay, we're gonna.
when I spoke with Steve, is that his name? Onofre, from Canyon County about foregone taxes. A lot of cities are using it as a safeguard, I guess, if you will. I've talked to Doug about it, and I'm concerned about it. So, boy, we're at 2%. Should something happen, I don't want to use it, Councilman Skog. I don't want to use that, but I don't know.
And you can protect yourself right here, right we're using it.
Well,
So-
it's a good tool, I should say. However, it does increase the taxes to the community if you use it,
Well, no,
right?
not it doesn't affect, it just allows budget capacity in the
Well,
future
right,
if there's an emergency.
But it is, in effect, increase in, because we've foregone the taxes, we haven't charged anybody with them, we can, and if so, that
Oh.
would result in an increase in
Yes.
tax.
Yeah, to be clear, but the
did.
disclaim motion is different than, I think,
Disclaim completely
yes. the
gives away any
disclaim
right
is-
to that.
Yes, it's different. So-
May I ask, and this is off the, what's our current accumulative on foregone? Since
I believe
there
we're
was a
at,
time where we couldn't go back, so.
1 second.
Oh, you can go back forever.
second.
Oh, I thought there was a certain amount where you could not
We discussed that.
disclaim.
Last year, we discussed that with the legal, and we had another man here who.
Okay, my bad.
$4.3 million.
So currently, there's $4.3 million in foregone that has not been disclaimed.
Say that number again?
No,
$4.3 million, slightly over, if you want the exact number, it's $4,345,442.
And what we're talking about trying to basically protect at this point is the 1% is about 380 or whatever it is.
Yeah, this year.
96.
Right.
So
396.
I'd like to make a comment, because Bruce knows I feel strongly on this. It's one thing to really work to keep that levy rate down and to protect our citizens. But that, right there, that's 4 or 5 officers, right? That is 5 firefighters. So if we go into, as Doug was talking about, as we reduce this levy and we get into a financial challenge, $396,000 is the difference in being able to fund public safety as we look to the future. And I personally support being conservative and trying to do what we've done. I don't support this council voting and tying the hands of a future council, because we know that we have needed a fire station since 2011. It's going to cost us almost $1 million. We're disclaiming half of what it's going to cost to provide fire service in South Nampa. And we have citizens that are saying we have to have it. If we have an economic downturn, we may have citizens that say, please. But then we've cut ourselves because we can't do it. I mean, there's no way we could do it. And Fleet and Streets already has a plan when we pay off our GO bond to consider foregone, which would not be an increase to our taxpayers, to consider funding streets for our community. Our community has clearly said that public safety and streets is a very high priority. I personally think it's very important that we're good stewards, but we also don't commit future councils and tie their hands and take away the funding for half of the funding for fire station personnel, for future police, or for streets that our city may need. And those decisions need to be taken very seriously. We understand it's a tax, it will tax the citizens, but just 1% is for officers, right? And so we just figured out how to do it. And so I totally support being conservative and where we're going. I do not support and don't feel like it's wise at all to disclaim our foregone and limit the ability of future councils to be able to respond to needs as they come forward.
Mayor, council, my concern is less because there's 4.2 million. If we have that moment, I think that that's quite a bit of budget capacity if we had to use that as a last resort tool. If it was like 500,000, I'd probably be more concerned about trying to preserve, even though we hope we never reach that point. But my concern more is that we timed the hire of certain employees, especially the 4 officers, and if I did all the math correct, we have $200,000 plus that would be rolled over into next budget year that is not included in this budget year because of how we're gimmicking. And the budget capacity is very limited as we go to next year. If 1% is already going to streets, I'm already counting over half a point that we're actually approving in this year's budget for next year, sort of like a budgeting, I don't want to say a gimmick, but a budgeting tool. And I want to retain that budget capacity in next year and not lose the full point that would carry over as far as the starting point. So our starting point, Doug, you're nodding, I think we're tracking on the same point. So our starting point next year we would lose the budget capacity by doing the 2. And so maybe what I'd feel comfortable with, sort of a Dave Ramsey plan maybe, is keeping some capacity, and then I would support a resolution to reject a portion of that. So what I would be okay with is maybe 2.25% or 2.5, but we're not spending that other half point. It would go into general reserves. So it'd be an unspent, unallocated amount. But the budget capacity at our starting point next year is that we would have that half point, at least the rollover, our starting point. Am I understanding that right?
Well, I don't know. If you're talking about foregone, we wouldn't be budgeting anything more than 2%.
Yes.
We would just retain the capacity to leave all or a portion of that in foregone to leverage at a later date if the council so chose. But we're not talking about changing the budget here, are we?
No, what he's saying is that we would put it into reserves.
Right.
Yeah, what I'm offering is sort of maybe a compromise,
Yeah.
what I'm hearing, because I'm more concerned about the budget capacity at our starting point next year.
Yes.
I would like to have the rollover capacity without appropriating that, because we're saving it, and have that go into reserves, but at least have the starting place next year, because I'm more concerned about tying our hands next year and then playing catch up.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. If you're talking $200,000, which is basically roughly half a point,
Yeah.
we couldn't start off with a 2% budget next year because we're already $200,000 in the hole.
That's-
You'd have to
that's what
start at least 2.5, and that would just barely get a break even. That's where we're setting ourselves up for next year.
To be clear, what we're talking about is next year, if we were allowed 3% and we could add the 4, that'd be a 4%, or 5 or whatever, if you went back further, it's all taxation. It's not money that's sitting in a bank anywhere. It's all about how we're going to address fiscal year 21. So when you're talking about starting and rolling over, are you talking about starting out with a 3.5
I don't.
No.
whatever,
It's
whatever it
compounding
is.
off the total amount.
Yeah, I know.
percentage.
So we're basically obligating about 0.5%, is what I'm hearing you say. But we're not determining what next year's goal is going to be. We fought for 2% this year.
Well,
leaving
I'm assuming
1%.
in good faith that we would keep the employees that we're hiring in this fiscal year. I guess what my concern is that the percent capacity off the total would be limited next year's budget. And we would already be assuming out the get-go obligations based on this year's decision. I want to retain the 3% off 40 million is even 2%. So if we did a 2% budget projection next year, 2% off, an extra 200, 300,000, the percent off the aggregate total would allow more budget capacity. That's my concern. So I'm still willing to support rejecting a portion. I hate going into next year with starting with a more limited capacity.
Are you suggesting that we retain a portion of the foregone and disclaim a portion?
Yes, it's sort of a compromise to save, disclaim
Yeah.
part, maybe half a point, or reject 250,000, and then the other would go into reserves, but it would start with the
Well,
budget
it would
capacity.
be clear here. It would not go into reserves, it would go into foregone, which we could draw upon if the council so chose.
Well, no, it wouldn't go into foregone. What he's saying is we take, for example, if we take a 2.5% increase,
Okay, all right.
right? We take a 2.5, what I believe Rick
I'm
is
just throwing the
saying-
idea out
Right.
there and sort of a compromise and reject the
$200,000
other half
savings.
point.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, we've strayed from the motion that's on the floor. On,
Okay.
and
it's-
we can still talk about that, but let's get through this.
Yeah, if this passes, then we can't have that discussion, because then we've
right.
lost the capacity. We've actually not just given it back, but,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, then, we can fund that fire station with impact fees, that's what I've been told.
But we,
And we may have a fire district that's going to come up this fall to discuss, correct?
it is, but, yeah.
So that may take care of those things. And I'm hoping we'll have another Squad 51, whatever they'll call that, I don't know, but Squad creative number. And that really helps with personnel hiring. So the motion on the floor for foregone is there. You still have 4.3 million out there that never goes away unless
Well,
you take it.
Please,
Right.
just be aware, like I mentioned, the time value of money. It is $4.3 million in number, less, in terms of actual purchasing dollars, it becomes less each year.
I understand that, but today it's $4.3 million at the value of $4.3 million today.
But it was put in at 4.3 how many years ago?
Oh, it's gradual over different years.
Right.
But today it's $4.3 million.
You're saying
So,
the purchasing power is what you're saying is
It's decreasing.
is different from when it was maybe
Right,
initially
when
put
it was
in.
put in,
Right,
correct.
yeah.
I have a quick question. Tom, the streets plan for using foregone was 2 point what?
Mayor, Council, there was, the payment for the GO bond was 2.5 million a year. And in our plan, we weren't looking for 2.5 million. Going back to streets, it was just 500,000.
500,000 a
Yeah.
year
Yep,
to go. Okay, so that would be pulled from foregone, though.
right.
Okay, but that is per year,
No, that would be the one.
a one-time.
one-time, right,
A
it would always be
one-time
there.
that gets
Yeah,
dedicated.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I appreciate
But
it.
then that rolls over, right? So it's not a net total of 500,000, it's the 500,000 in the budget capacity.
That's
Well, since we're-
dedicated to streets.
Council Hagerboom, since we're paying 2.5 million a year, today for a bond, we'd just be paying 500,000
yes.
a year towards the streets.
Yeah, so the
There'd
net
be
impacts
$2 million
you.
Yeah,
left
2 million
somewhere
net.
else to go in other areas.
Mhm. Thank you. But so right there, and if we ever had to go back to fire at 1 million, because I don't know, as the economy changes, we just have needs that we have to fill. And so, not that we may not ever use it, I feel strongly, principally, it's not wise, and I do question the principle of a current council limiting what future councils can do.
Well, we do that every year, in one way or another, by our spending or not spending. subdivision.
Yeah, but not by disclaiming foregone. That's a new ruling in our legislature, because it used to be that you could never disclaim. That is a new ruling that you can. I just say I don't agree with it. But thank you.
Clear on that.
Okay.
And let me just, there again, I'm going to get off here a little bit, but I see the Boise, the city of Boise, where I was raised, has changed over time. Now, if there's 51% of the Boise citizens that want to be spenders, it seems like it's moving that way, fine. At this point in time, I would love to secure the conservative fiscal principles of NAMPA in my lifetime. And I'm not going to be serving, if I do happen to win next election, then I'll be on another 4 years. But I don't have any problem limiting if I can control a little bit what this city of Nampa is going to be like. And I think, at least at this point in time, the philosophical nature of the majority of the people, the citizens of Nampa, want to be conservative and want to control future to a certain extent. So that just, here again, it's philosophical, right, wrong, or otherwise. That's just me. So.
Do we have a second?
There was, it was.
Oh, you second. Oh, okay.
So just for clarity, in talking, I had Nate double check. We actually, this vote establishes the will of the council, but it actually has to be voted on after, I believe, the public hearing with the budget and with the resolution. And it needs its own public hearing. Thank you. So the vote here is nothing more than the council establishing what their wishes are, but this is not the final vote because it has to go to public hearing with the budget,
Yes, and we need legal to draft all that. For
the
us.
resolution. So I guess the question is, I don't know that this is it's not really a vote that carries any, that you can hold to. Right, the vote doesn't carry weight. So with that, we could do one of two things. You can go ahead and vote, but it doesn't carry any weight, or.
We're asking, well, let me redo the motion.
Okay.
My motion is to ask legal to draft the necessary resolution to disclaim the foregone from our budget.
Okay, so we've amended the motion, and it was seconded by, and Darrell, you,
I will second the amended motion.
okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Abstain.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Bruner,
Yes.
and Skog.
Yes.
Okay, so with that, I know that Councilman Hogaboom, you had asked, that was to disclaim foregone, but you had asked about having a 0.5%, and we have not voted on that. So I don't know if we need to come back to
Yeah,
that.
well, we've appropriated what we've appropriated. So my understanding is the budget only has the authority of what we've approved, and what we've approved equals at or less than a 2% portion. I'm just leaving today thinking about next year. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should be happy we get to go home. But next year is going to be tight. It's going to be tight at 3%. It's going to be because of what we'd be assuming in this year's appropriations by timing the hiring. So I'm just.
You're correct. We are setting ourselves up for a little bit of a tighter budget challenge next year. That's the reality.
Yeah. Which is
Less
okay.
tax revenue in, and we are committed as a council, at least, and I don't think we ought to be going back on it. We've already agreed to 1% to streets. So we've got 1.5% out of 3 already committed today for next year.
Yeah.
And we may not have the same, this year we had new construction revenue that was really helpful to us. We're gonna have less budget based on our levy rate, and then it's all dependent on new construction revenue.
So I was just throwing out the idea of not appropriating the 0.5%, but putting it in the bank and carrying over into next year. The starting place starts a little bit better. So that was what I was throwing out as an idea. But for what it's worth.
Are we saying that needs to have a motion for that?
Well,
You go ahead and
Yeah.
put it out there.
We still have to have public hearing on this, right?
We do have to have.
Right. Right.
It would basically be suggesting a line item of approving, and then to be clear, the money would have to be captured, so we'd be going over 2% to maybe 2.5% or 2.25%, but to save $150,000, or maybe meet halfway, save $100,000, knowing that next year we're gonna have to start at 200 plus. But at least have 100,000 carrying over in the budget capacity would be helpful. At least get us halfway there next year in the budget capacity. So it'd be proposing a new line item that's not in the proposed budget to save $125,000. That's not being paid to anyone, $125,000 in the budget capacity to go into the bank, into our reserve fund.
Mayor? I'm a little bit confused, and so please clear this up if you could for me. And I understand what you're trying to do, and it's proactive, and I appreciate that. But I remember asking specifically the question over the last 2 days, if we were to add the 9 officers, is it sustainable in our next year's budget? And I was answered yes.
Well, that was before we started these budget hearings and did what we did. If we did it within a 1% increase, it's sustainable. The way we did it was we only funded half of a year. And so right now, what we've carried forward is 60, I'm just trying to add it up, 160,000 plus 28 plus 40, so $228,000.
That's about what I had.
Is, we have committed 228,000, which was over half of a point in next year's budget, is committed by the decision we're making. So that means we have to start next year with a 1.5% that's already committed by doing what we're doing today. And so we understand we're doing it, but I think Rick makes a very good point that if you take another 0.5% and you put it in your savings account, then next year, it is a tax, but next year, we haven't already committed. I mean, we've already funded the position next year, we're good to go. Because the money's there.
And if we were to take that 0.5%, that money is then earmarked specifically for, no, there can be no budget amendment, there could be no emergency that can take that money away.
Well, that's the will of the council, because the council is the one that's going to vote on any changes to the budget. So the council would do that. You would earmark it and say, this is going into reserves, and it's not going to be spent, it's going into a savings account, and it will fund next year. That's up to the council and how you would choose to do that.
Thank you.
Because that would roll over. So if 150,000 was included in this budget, you would start next year with that line item that wouldn't count. That would be starting the budget, correct me if I'm wrong, Doug. If we started next year's budget 0% increase, you would still have the 150,000 contained within a 0% increase next year. Whereas by not including that, the 150,000 has to come out of the increase in the budget capacity next year.
Madam Mayor?
Am I understanding that right, Doug?
I think essentially that's correct.
Okay.
And you keep
Okay,
changing
sorry.
the
I
figure,
just wanted-
Councilman, you keep changing the figure.
Yeah, I'm just-
125,
Right,
150? Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
Fellow council members, Councilman Holcomb, I think what you're mentioning is wise. We've done a good job. We're at 2%. We've approved a budget. But if you made the motion in that a limited amount, say 100, 125, I would second it for reserves. And that takes us over 2% a little bit.
Question for that, though. Didn't we already approve the budget?
We just each line, each.
Or did
line
we
item.
approve to have it go as a public hearing item to be
I
further
haven't- I
considered?
haven't heard that yet.
No, we have not.
I thought again, maybe I missed it. I thought we voted on the budget with that decreased amount. Then we used that decreased amount to be able to fund the officers. So.
We did that, but we haven't formally said we are done and that this budget goes forward. So there's still a place to come back and say, okay, so we still have that 1% sitting there. We're not done, other than the vote that we had before saying we want to keep to 2%. But in this process, we've approved all these budgets as they are.
Okay, so.
But we haven't done a final vote to send this forward as the budget.
And I thought we had. I thought we were just talking now about a foregone. If Bruce had not brought that up, we would have been done and off down the road.
Right.
Well, his motion was to draft, to reject the foregone amount of any foregone in this budget.
Right.
But we're still not completely done. I guess this is the last hour to cut anything or
Okay.
add anything.
Well, I thought we had already gone down that path too far to be able to come back now and amend the budget
Okay,
amount.
and Mayor, let me just clarify this, even though what we say from a council recommendation, this is not the final until the public hearing takes place.
Except that we cannot increase after today.
Yeah, but we certainly can cut.
Yes.
Okay, so if we don't even consider the foregone then as a topic,
We've done that already.
We've asked that a foregone resolution be drafted, but we haven't, we didn't actually state, I don't believe, the dollar amount in that foregone. We asked that it be that we draft it and that we disclaim foregone.
for further consideration.
For further
at the public
consideration.
So that's my point. I thought we had approved a budget contingent on, those things, but we were done with that. The only thing about the foregone was in encumbering future councils.
Correct.
If we don't go down the path of foregone further in discussion, then we've already got an approved budget that we're moving forward with. It has nothing to do then in Rick's concern about encumbering next year by limiting that 1% from this year.
No.
So am I wrong? I thought we had already made the decision.
Well, I'm bringing
Vote on
up,
the budget.
this would be, that's why I'm throwing it out there
So
for
now you want to
consideration.
amend the budget that we already approved.
No, we did not make a final, and and this is important for everyone and for public to know. This is the council's recommendation to move forward, but we have a public hearing coming forward. And there is nothing final until that public hearing. I mean, because it's going forward to a public hearing. This is a recommendation to move forward to public hearing.
So we're
So-
going to increase the budget amount is what you're recommending.
Without appropriating it to payroll, with the understanding that next year, starting at 0% increase, you have 150,000 as a potential that would carry over. So while it goes into reserves this year, it would be realized in the over $200,000 that we're,
Yeah, so the full conversation that you were having that I was not really following was, when you're talking about foregone, that's taxes that haven't been assessed. That would be in the future. When you talk about putting it in reserves, we're talking two different things now. We're talking about adding money back into the budget that you can roll over into next year. That's a part of what we're planning today, not taxing later.
That is correct.
that,
So we approved all of the budgets as presented. We still have, and we've agreed that we're funding all of our officers out of our existing 2%, and we figured out how to function within the 2%.
Right.
Bruce said he would like to disclaim and ask that we vote to bring a resolution forward to disclaim any additional foregone. What Rick is saying is, everything's approved, we're done, we're at 2%, we have an extra % left. And he's wanting to discuss how we
yeah,
use
so
that
this is a
1%.
so let me try to wrap it down.
So let-
Part of the motion would be,
Just a minute, before you do
Yeah.
that, and then please. So bottom line, so what goes into the paper tomorrow?
Let me-
Does it say, if you decide, say it was 200,000, which we decided was, what, the 0.5%? So, and you talked about maybe half of that, which, 100,000. So in the paper tomorrow, then, it would be that the council is recommending 2.25% is what the bottom line is.
2.1.
Budget increase, not tax. not
Yes.
tax.
Yes, a budget increase. Isn't that what would be the factual read?
I'd have to calculate the exact percentage, but it's essentially correct.
Approximately, that's,
Yeah.
rather than a 2% recommendation, it would be a whatever,
Yeah.
plus.
Personally, it would have been a lot easier for me to follow your line of logic had we discussed it when we were going through the budget. To go now and back up the path and say, no, we should have included this now.
well, it's,
And I
no,
interrupted
this,
him, so.
well,
he-
this is the appropriate time to bring it up because all the money might have been allocated hypothetically. And so at this point, when we're talking about disclaiming, what I'm throwing out as a compromise is disclaim more of that point than what we'd save. And so it's sort of a compromise measure. So if 380,000 is left within the budget capacity, I'm talking about 150,000 in good faith to support a motion to disclaim. If it was 150, disclaim 230,000, which means that
Right.
doesn't roll over into budget capacity.
So why didn't we
in
fully
consideration.
fund one of the positions instead of waiting until April? I mean, you could have used the same amount of dollars in that regard. No, we're talking about adding money back into the budget to sit in a fund someplace that we can use later on. Why didn't you just go ahead and say, okay, let's use a portion of it and put it towards that? Because what's going to be in the paper tomorrow is that we started and we approved a budget, as far as I understood, and we were moving down a path of only a 2% increase in our general budget. The only thing that really prompted this discussion was the idea of the foregone, where we would encumber future councils, and I can see that. What we're stating, at least I understood, was that we had worked hard to try to get 9 new officers with a 2% increase in the general budget. And that's a strong statement to make. Now we're reneging on that and moving backwards and then going forward again. So I just wish we would have maybe had this conversation earlier and applied those dollars towards
Well, I
something
thought we
else.
did have that conversation earlier.
No, we didn't.
Is it inappropriate for me to make a comment?
Go for it.
No, I just know that as we talked about the hiring of the police, one of the big reasons we didn't hire 9 at once was Chief Joe's
his
ability
feedback.
to hire 9 at the same time and get them all trained. It's easier to hire 5, train those, then hire 5 and train those.
But there's
as a
staff
state.
positions that we considered as well.
Yes,
We
it were.
actually did postpone, though. We did it for budget reasons.
Okay.
And, I mean, flatly, we did it for budget reasons. But I think this discussion is a little different than it would have been earlier, because it would have been that we would have been hiring a position and it goes into budget. I think the message to the community that just like any family saves and has a savings account, what the city is doing is we're saying, we're going to set aside money and it's going to go into savings. Because we have made a decision already to increase our budget next year. Even though we didn't increase it this year, we are voting to increase our budget next year because of the positions that we've added. And we're saying that we're going to make sure we have the money in the bank to pay for those positions.
And all I'm saying is, those saved dollars, instead of being in our pocket, could have stayed in the taxpayer's pocket. And that's what they're going to read tomorrow.
Well, then, the only thing is, then you don't hire the officers.
No.
It's that simple. You don't hire them because we're making a decision, and excuse me, guys, but I'm just going to be candid on here. We're making a decision to commit funds as a council to next year
Right?
that technically, that most of this council, but we have an election year. The question is, do we legally have the authority to commit funds for next year? I mean, we could go down that path if we wanted to. We just committed funds to next year's budget and which is, I understand what we're doing, but Rick, there's a piece of what he's saying that's very right, because we have committed a budget next year, and that budget is the budget that of over $200,000. It's $228,000 that we have already committed next year.
Okay, have I missed something here? Because I understood where we were at was we're allowed 3, we only took 2, and the additional 1 was what we saved the taxpayer as far as what we were hoping to do, correct? So now what we're talking about was an additional 1% that was going to be available in the future, not taxed today or taxed in next year's budget. Is that correct? Am I wrong with that?
The additional 1% that we did not take,
Is a future tax availability to future councils?
if it was needed.
If it's needed.
If it's needed.
We're not adding to what our current budget is, that additional 1%. We're saying, okay, we're only going to take 2, and then in the future, if we need it because of some emergency, we can draw upon that plus what's been behind it that was never collected. So it's a future tax. It's not a part of our budget for fiscal year 20. Is that correct? The extra 1%, because we were saving that 1%.
That's
No,
if we
it's
stop
different.
right now.
If we, well, okay. So you're saying add the 1% back into
No,
the
I'm not.
general?
No.
Okay,
not.
so maybe that's what I've missed.
He's saying a quarter or
He's saying take 0.25%,
And add it into our budget.
add it into, but put it towards savings. It becomes because it's not approved in anywhere. You take 0.25% and you put that in savings so that we have those dollars available for the next
So
year.
why don't we designate where those savings are? Why don't we just designate it into the police department fund? Instead of just leaving it.
You can't do that. This is at the very end here where whatever last edits we're doing, I just know we can't add to the budget, we can cut. So
I mean, my understanding, and we're getting into the weeds here big time, I think, but to me, you're totally correct, Councilman Haverfield, is why, I mean, what are, same old. We could have just went ahead and just deferred maybe 2 positions for April and go ahead and add 2 more right for the start of this budget, and it would have taken care of that.
Can I make a motion?
We've already.
Can I make a motion that we just postpone this until another day so we can get out of here now and figure what we're going to do?
We can't, because we need to determine how we're going to move
I think we
forward.
need to ask legal about what we can do and what we can't do.
Councilman Hogaman, what I would appreciate is you go ahead and make a motion, we vote on it and decide what's your suggestion.
And lower has a better chance of passing.
I have one question first, please.
Yes.
If the money is to be taken, the 0.2%, with the dollar figure, $228,000, and it goes and sits in savings, what difference is it gonna make? I know on savings accounts right now, you're getting what, 0.0037%? So what happens? I mean, is it better for the taxpayers to have that money and use, or is it better for it to sit in savings so we have a jump start on next year?
So it isn't so much about savings. So 1% is 68 cents a month. As you guys, and Doug shared that with us, this 1% is going to save an individual $8.15 a year, which is about 68 cents a month. So, but if we spend it, right, then it rolls over every year. That same tax levy, it sets our levy and it rolls over. So by disclaiming that, by not using it, whatever that 1% is, which is $396,000 approximately, that money isn't in the budget for us to use next year. We don't ever get it back. If you don't disclaim it, you could go back and get it if you needed it for an emergency. If you disclaim it, it's gone, you never get it back. As Doug was talking about, when we roll over budget to budget, you can end up putting yourself in a deficit and in a difficult place. That's where fiscal stewardship, you have to be really careful, because you can say, we're saving the taxpayer today, but what we've done possibly down the road is we've created ourselves a huge headache. You have to be mindful of what you're pushing down the road. And that's where by not using, so right now we have funded positions that are going to cost us $228,000 next year, but we don't have that money in the budget. So when we go into our budget next year, we're starting short $228,000, which is 0.5%, approximately. It could be a little more than 0.5%, because our levy rate's down. So over 0.5%. So then we've committed a percent to streets. So we're going to start next year's budget with a deficit of already having committed maybe 6%. Right? So then if you need to do increases because you've had a change, it is what it is, because the money rolls over year to year. If you commit it, it's there. If you don't commit it, you don't get it back. It's gone.
That's correct.
Madam Mayor?
Mhm.
We did some of that last year. We hired halfway through the year or something. I don't remember what it is. But Councilman Hogabaum, if you would make a motion, then we could be done with this part of our discussion.
Yeah, I wanted it to be clear to everyone. I understand it. But I just want to start at 0 next year with funding the positions that we're timing. And this compromise doesn't even get to that 228,000. It would at least start us halfway there. And we would still be disclaiming more than, this would maybe be not even 0.5%, not even 0.25%, $100,000 of 380. And I'm willing to disclaim the rest, which means
396. Just
396.
Yeah.
So less than 1/4 point, or right at 1/4 of a point, not even 0.5 point. And I'm in good faith disclaim that, which means that's the forever savings to the taxpayer. And we've gone below what we did last year at 275. The budget the year before that was 3% increase. And so we're still at less than the last 2 years. So my motion would be to save $100,000 in the budget.
Increase the budget we've just approved by $100,000, and it goes into a reserve.
It goes into a reserve contingency if we have some sort of budget amendment that comes up. It's there to work with. If it gets unspent, it's realized it's in reserves, but we start next budget year with 100,000 that's included, at least fund 200 and something thousand without, we're still going to have to eat into points in the budget capacity next year, but at least gets us maybe a little bit halfway there.
So, is that a motion? I'm just, I don't think Councilwoman's Levi's questions was answered, but you know better than I do. I just didn't feel like you talked about a savings account and so on. Did you feel like your question was answered?
Thank you for your attendance.
I thought Doug was about ready to give you an answer.
I'll second the motion so we can have discussion.
Okay, thanks.
So Councilwoman Levi, I'm sorry, I guess we're waiting for the answer.
On,
What exactly is not clear? What do you need Doug to provide?
yeah, exactly. I know what I would provide, but I don't know if it's the answer you're looking for. Now, if Councilman Hoagland makes a motion to increase the budget by $100,000, that would go into an account. We would have to budget a line item for that as an expense that we would not spend. We would, then at the end of the year, it would roll over into our balance and help us starting out the following year's budget by being a little less behind than we are now. If we leave it as it stands now with no change, we'll start out in the hole approximately $228,000.
Right. Kind of the point I was bringing up, just taking it from my own home practical expense and something the mayor had said earlier, is when you put something into savings, I'll let you go with that and then I'll ask you another question.
Okay, I remember your question now. And the mayor started to answer it. This is not the intended to get interest earnings on savings. It's to help us prevent us from having to over budget next year because we under budgeted this year. So it's a kind of a leveling mechanism, but it's not determined. Well, right now, if you put money in a regular savings account, what are you getting? 0.5%, maybe 1%. You're not really putting it in there to get interest income. You're putting it in there as your personal reserve against a rainy day, and that's similar concept here.
That's your emergency fund.
And I think one of the, thank you, Dave Ramsey. I think one of the things, again, it goes back to the fact that, I'm a very concrete, this is what you have, this is what you do your zero-based budget on. So my second question then along that line, if it's earmarked or I know it's giving us money going into or jump-starting us into our next budget session. We have negotiations that with one of our public safety entities. So they're not going to look at that and think that that's available money.
No, they wouldn't, because the negotiations are revolving around, in my understanding, they're revolving around rates, not personnel. This is a personnel-related issue.
Okay. Thank you for doing it. Thank you, Councilman Brunner.
So we have a motion on the floor, and was the motion on the floor? Didn't we have a motion?
It's been quite a while ago.
And the motion was
The motion
for
was to save
100,000.
And it was seconded by Councilman Scott, yeah.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Rodriguez,
No.
Brunner,
No.
Levi,
No.
Haverfield,
No.
Skog,
No.
and Hoagland.
Yes. I have to make the motion. The reason I brought it up for conversation is if there wasn't consensus, we could have gone home. But
Okay.
we're good now.
Mayor Kling, could I make a motion that we approve the budget that we worked so hard on, that we go ahead and get that prepared for the public hearing
Yes.
and move forward on that,
I'll
Second.
second that.
for publication, I'm sorry.
Second that loud.
I'll second that.
It was moved by Councilman Haverfield, seconded by Victor Rodriguez. And is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Brunner,
Yes.
Hoagland,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
did I miss?
Me.
Yes, Levi,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Haverfield.
Yes. And just for clarification, the foregone topic will be brought before us so that it'll be a public hearing, so we can discuss that at that point.
All right.
Okay.
And for the 10th time, public hearing, we cannot increase, but there is potential to cut.
Well, the whole idea with the foregone is whether we're
I'm not
going to
talking about the
encumber.
foregone.
Well, but that's what the first motion was. And I think that's what caused a lot of this further discussion. And I can see where your point is, Rick. I think if we maybe been expressed earlier, maybe we would have held more or something, or found another place to cut to try to hit that goal, which I'm just goal-oriented guy.
No, I
You
appreciate
know,
that.
touchdowns matter to me, so I think we accomplished something
We
really
did.
pretty
We-
special for the city of Nampa.
We did, and in no way was I trying to denigrate the hard work that had gone into it. I was trying to get us, I was already thinking next year, so, and my apologies for throwing that at the end if it was really complicated, and I do apologize for that.
Question?
Yes.
When is the public hearing date?
The public hearing is, it's the 19th of August. So we will publish,
2 weeks prior.
2 weeks prior. Well, actually, we've got, Monday, August 12th, we've got published first notice of public hearing, but that's only 1 week ahead of time, so that may not be correct. So we will, on Monday, August 5th, we will pass a resolution calling for the public hearing. Then we will publish it the next week, and then the second notice will be that week, and we will, on the 19th, will be the public hearing for both.
So Mayor, regarding the foregone resolution, will that also be a public hearing on that same date then?
I think it probably
I
would.
mean, I
It
just
should
think, I think
align.
it's very
Yeah.
important that the public is made aware as much as possible that
Right.
that will be part of it. Because
Yeah.
I think we need to listen to the citizens
Yeah, yep,
regarding
Okay.
the foregone.
okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, I would stand for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mayor?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You guys now want to pay admission?